This is what $1 million houses look like around the world. So in New York City, $1 million will get you a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment depending on the exact area. In London, you can stretch things a bit further with high-end finishes but equal limited space. In the suburbs of the Midwest, though, you can expect a 4-bedroom, 4,000 square foot home complete with multiple garages and a big backyard in a nice neighborhood. In the suburbs of Canada, you can get a roughly 30% larger home than in the US because home prices are relatively cheaper there. And in Mexico, you're looking at an ultra high-end 7,500 square foot property with high-grade security and lavishness. In Tokyo, you can get a multi-level family home living in the outskirts for that amount, while in Dubai, you can get a modern 2-bedroom high-rise spot with amenities. In Nigeria, you can get a 10,000 square foot, 10-plus bedroom and an entire gated compound, putting you at the top 0.1% of homeowners, while in Monaco, $1 million will get you a really small studio apartment or maybe even just a parking space depending on precise location. And finally, in Madagascar, land can be found for as little as $100 per acre in some areas, so you can theoretically buy 10,000 acres there with $1 million, which would tank the market and make you a literal landlord. This is what major cities look like over the last 100 years. So 100 years ago, New York was just taking over the tallest city crown from London, though significantly less than today, but relied heavily on waterfront shipping rather than finance and technology. 100 years ago, Dubai was a tiny village with no paved roads, electricity, or buildings, effectively in the 1700s in terms of layout, as opposed to today being a megacity hosting the world's tallest building, artificial islands, and high-end luxury. Similar to this was Singapore, which was previously a British colonial port with slums, malaria, and overcrowding on a marshy swampland, and now it's a city and a garden with premier urban life and cleanliness. This is what Las Vegas looked like 100 years ago, having just about 2,000 people in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Now it's the global entertainment hub of the world with over 2 million residents and iconic landmarks like the Strip and now the Sphere. Tokyo 100 years ago was recovering from earthquakes and was fairly flat, built on wood and stone. Since then, it's become hyper efficient, safe, and modern, being many people's top architectural city. And then London 100 years ago was the largest city in the world and an architectural hub dominated by fogs. It's transformed now, though, to be a global village similar to modern day New York City. Pretty cool, right? This is what slang looked like over the last 100 years. So the silent generation pioneered pop culture based slang that was playful yet polite, with the most popular being the cat's pajamas, which means excellent, scram, which means to go away, and moxie, which means courage. After this was the baby boomers, whose slang reflected rebellion and counterculture post-war, and so they opted for words like groovy, which means cool, far out, which means amazing, and bummer, which means disappointing. Onto Gen X, which had slang that reflected early digital awareness and pre-internet media, so they invented words like fresh, which means cool, right on, which means agreed, and even epic, which means amazing. From here we have millennials, and they have popularized text and internet-born phrases like OMG and LOL, meaning oh my gosh and laugh out loud respectively, as well as terms like bae, which is just a babe shortening, and lit, which means exciting. Gen Z is meme and social media driven and emphasize irony often with their terms like riz, which means charisma, and sus, which means suspicious. Leading us now to Gen Alpha, who is actively forming our language as we speak with heavy meme vernacular like 6'7", which means nothing, and then even choppelganger, which means an ugly lookalike. I wonder what Gen Beta will have for us. This is what beauty looked like over the last 1,000 years. So up until about the year 500, beauty was tied to symmetry in line with Greek ideals, and then it transitioned shortly afterwards to having young baby-like features. In the year 1000, beauty was tied to porcelain, pale skin, which signaled you didn't work outside, alongside a big forehead, leading to women picking their hairlines to get that oval look. Into the 1500s, and weight gain was a beauty indicator for women and men as it signaled affordability to eat. In the 1800s, tiny waists as little as 18 inches would be in, which actually injured a lot of women due to organ suppression. Similarly, looking sickly was thought to be refined, and so pale with dark circles was in. In the early 1900s, bob haircuts and dark eyes and makeup were in, as it mimicked the stars of the silent film era, unlike into the 1950s, and the hourglass look emerged with beauty standards tied to people like Marilyn Monroe. Contrarily, though, the next 50 years afterwards, it started to get thinner and thinner to define beauty. But then in the late 2000s and 2010s, curves emerged again, with Instagram and figures like Kim Kardashian influencing culture, which now leads us to the 2020s, and there's less certainty around what ideal beauty looks like, so I guess it's all individual now. Pretty cool, right? These are actors that almost died on set. So Sylvester Stallone almost died during the filming of Rocky IV as he took a real punch from Dolph Lundgren in this scene, which he had to actually spend 9 days in intensive care over, with the impact being similar to a head-on car crash. Jackie Chan has a permanent hole in his head thanks to a 25-foot fall he had after a tree branch snapped during this scene of Armor of God, where he ultimately cracked his skull on a rock. Tom Cruise was almost decapitated during The Last Samurai after a mechanical horse malfunctioned, and his head was inches away from hitting a sword that was luckily pulled back 1 centimeter away. Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future Part 3 actually choked for real during this scene and passed out for nearly a minute after offering to do the scene realistically. Similarly, Diane Kruger in Inglourious Bastards actually lost consciousness from Christoph Waltz choking her in this scene. Isla Fisher almost drowned on the set of Now You See Me after her chains got stuck during the water in this scene, being underwater for 3 minutes. The crew actually thought she was just doing a great job acting, but actually she was drowning. And finally, Jason Statham accidentally drove a truck 60 feet off a pier into the Black Sea during the Expendables 3 filming, but luckily his training allowed him to break free free and swim to the surface to survive. That's crazy. These are actors who changed their identities for roles. So Joseph Fiennes played Michael Jackson in an Urban Myths episode and received so much backlash that they had to pull the episode off air, making it now lost media. Similarly, Mickey Rooney played a Japanese landlord named Mr. Yunioshi in Breakfast at Tiffany's, which didn't age well with many people. Conversely, Eddie Redmayne played the role of a transgender character in the movie The Danish Girl and was nominated for an Oscar, and Jared Leto actually won an Oscar for his portrayal of a trans woman in Dallas Buyers Club, despite both of them being straight. Hollywood seems to like when actors change identities, with Tom Hanks winning an Oscar too for his role as a gay man in Philadelphia. Scarlett Johansson played a Japanese woman in Ghost in the Shell despite not being Asian, and Johnny Depp played a Native American in The Lone Ranger in 2013 despite not being a Native American. And finally, John Wayne turned Mongolian for his role as Genghis Khan in The Conqueror in 1956, with many people considering this to be the worst casting of all time. Pretty cool, right? These are actors who got paid for doing nothing. So Bob Hoskins got paid $200,000 just to be a backup for The Untouchables if Robert De Niro wasn't able to do it. Even crazier is Johnny Depp, who got paid $16 million for one scene in Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore because he was forced to resign after legal controversies but was still owed his full amount. Even more than this was Nicolas Cage, who was paid $20 million for Superman Lives despite the fact that it was scrapped because of his airtight contract. Marlon Wayans was cast to play Robin in Batman Returns but was later cut from the script, but actually still got paid the full amount and even continues to receive residual checks to this day from the Batman franchise. Paul Rudd shot a scene for Bridesmaids that was scrapped, but he still received $1 million, as did Shailene Woodley for The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was also scrapped but resulted in millions for her. Speaking of Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire was paid the full amount of his contract for his role in Life of Pi, despite the fact they decided to recast him last second because he was too famous and thus distracting from the movie. And finally, Julia Roberts got paid $3 million for appearing for just 6 minutes in Valentine's Day, making her $8,000 per second, which is one of the highest actress payments of all time. Pretty cool, right? These are actors that hate their own movies. So Robert Pattinson outwardly trashes the Twilight Saga, even on the press tour, talking about how the story was weird and disgusting and how he mindlessly hated the films without even seeing them. George Clooney spent decades apologizing for his role in Batman and Robin as he believes it killed the franchise, while Halle Berry openly despises her role as Catwoman and even accepted the Razzie Award for Worst Actress in Person and acknowledged how trash it was. Channing Tatum regularly reminds people that he was forced to make G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra as part of a 3-movie deal with Paramount, and he claims that he hates it. Similarly, Alec Guinness hated his role in Star Wars because of the cringy dialogue, and he would only sign autographs for fans if they promised to never watch the movie again. Michael Caine famously hates the Jaws sequel, Jaws: The Revenge, and calls it terrible, while Jessica Alba almost quit acting because of Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer because her experience on set was so horrible. And finally, Mark Wahlberg claims to have only taken on the role in The Happening because he wanted to play a science teacher, but admits today that it's one of the worst movies ever created. I didn't see it, but there's no way it's that bad. These are actors who were tricked into movies. So Bill Murray agreed to voice Garfield for the 2004 Garfield movie because he saw it was written by his friend Joel Coen, not realizing it was a different Joel Coen. He stuck by his word though, and he ended up doing the movie. Halle Berry was tricked with a fake script for X-Men: The Last Stand, as she was shown a script where her character was the main focus, only to later pull the script and modify it so she was only a minor part. X-Men also blackmailed Ryan Reynolds into playing Deadpool in the Wolverine movie because they said he'd never get his own standalone movie unless he did it. Keanu Reeves was forced to star in the movie The Watcher because his friend forged his signature on a contract for the film. Instead of fighting it, he just decided to do the movie. Similarly, Tyler Perry signed on to play the lawyer in Gone Girl without knowing the twist that came with it. Edward Norton was trapped in a 3-movie contract with Paramount after blowing up, so he had to do random movies like The Italian Job due to his legal obligation. This is actually similar to Channing Tatum as well with the G.I. Joe franchise. And finally, Paula Abdul was tricked by Sacha Baron Cohen to be in his movie Bruno by inviting her to receive an award from a fake German television station, only to later use the clip in his movie. Pretty cool, right? These are crazy age limits around the world. So Iran declared legal adulthood for girls at 9 years old, yet for boys it's 6 years later at 15. In Nigeria and Pakistan, their age of criminal responsibility, which is the youngest age a child can be arrested and charged with a crime, is 7 years old. China has a minimum marriage age of 22 for men and 20 for women as part of their long-standing effort to manage population growth. And the Maldives have a law where if you were born after 2007, you can never legally buy tobacco, whereas anybody born before it could. Australia recently passed a law banning anybody under the age of 16 from having social media accounts like TikTok, Instagram, and X, being the first country in the world to do so. In Punjab, India, the legal drinking age is 25, while in many European countries like Germany and Italy, it's technically legal for any age to drink alcohol at home so long as there's parental consent. The UAE has the highest voting age in the world at 25, while Argentina has the lowest technically at 15 to vote in primaries. And finally, certain towns in the United States, namely in Virginia, have laws that retire kids over 12 from trick-or-treating, and they've recently even fined older teenagers for taking candy. That's rough. These are animals that are disappearing. So bumblebees are down nearly 90% over the last 20 years as a result of pathogen spillover from greenhouses and genetic isolation. In fact, depending on the 2026 conservation effort success, bumblebees could be extinct from the northern half of the United States in just 3 years. Snow crabs are down 80% since 2018, with over 10 billion snow crabs disappearing as a result of a heat wave that raised their metabolism in the hotter water. Unfortunately, many of them couldn't find enough calories to stay alive and died from starvation. Firefly populations are down 50% across species because of artificial light pollution that makes it impossible for males to see the mating flashes of females at night to reproduce, ending their reproductive cycle. Hummingbirds are down 80% over the last 50 years because of climate change that changed the bloom period, leaving hummingbirds with no food after they finish their 1,000-mile migration, leading to starvation. And finally, over half of the European eels population has disappeared because of dams and turbines that block their migration path, on top of hunting that has decimated their population. You hate to see it. These are animals that are surprisingly deadly. So snails are responsible for over 200,000 deaths every year since they carry a parasitic worm that contaminates water and is fatal to humans. Dogs too actually kill about 35,000 people per year, mainly from bites that result in rabies. Either through the transmission of Lyme's disease or from all the accidents caused, deer can technically be quite deadly, killing hundreds of humans per year. Technically though, hippos are actually the deadliest large land mammals, killing roughly 500 people per year thanks to their high aggression levels. The slow loris is the only venomous primate that has glands on its elbow that produces a toxin that can cause flesh-rotting infections in humans. Platypuses also actually have venomous spurs on their feet that can't kill but will cause excruciating pain in humans as well that lasts for weeks. Other animals that accrue hundreds of human kills per year include elephants and cows, both usually from trampling. Interestingly though, moose are surprisingly one of the deadliest by rate, as 10% of collisions with moose result in fatalities for the driver. And finally, mosquitoes are the deadliest animal on Earth by far, killing more than 1 million humans every year thanks to diseases like malaria and Zika that they carry. Nobody likes mosquitoes. These are animals that became humans. So Cacareco was a Brazilian rhino that received 100,000 votes in a city council election in 1959, beating the 11 humans by 90,000 votes before being disqualified later for not technically being a resident. Similarly, Incitatus was a horse who, during ancient Roman times, would regularly attend political dinners and was almost appointed to the Senate by the emperor who loved him. A dog named Gunther VI was a German shepherd who inherited a fortune of $400 million from a German countess. He owned mansions, yachts, and even had his own private chef. Stubbs the cat became the mayor of Talkeetna, Alaska in 1997 after residents were unhappy with the human candidates, and he actually served 20 years as mayor, regularly meeting with local constituents before passing away in 2017. There's a penguin in Scotland named Nils Olav who was knighted and actually became a major general of the King's Guard in 2008. He regularly inspects the troops and reviews their form. And finally, Happy the elephant in New York was a few votes away from legally being defined as a person under New York law after passing the mirror test in 2005. Pretty cool, right? These are animals that killed their owners. So an Australian woman had a camel as a pet, but during mating season, the camel tried to mate with her and crushed her to death under its weight, while a woman named Sandra Peevson was mauled by a pack of 9 wolf dogs that she actually raised since puppies after they challenged her position in the pack. Marius Els was a South African farmer who owned a baby hippo that he raised to be fully grown, but unfortunately one day it decided to bite Marius and drag him into the river and maul him to death. And this is actually similar to Timothy Treadwell, who spent 13 summers living amongst grizzly bears in Alaska, claiming to have befriended them and merging into their society. However, during his final trip, a rogue bear he apparently didn't befriend attacked and killed him and his girlfriend. Tilikum was a 12,000-pound orca at SeaWorld who killed 3 people, including its trainer, due to its captivity-induced psychosis, which ended up ending the orca program at SeaWorld. And finally, a New York man illegally owned a black mamba in his apartment and predictably was bit and died despite trying to immunize himself for years since the venom was too deadly. That's crazy. What happens if you drop an anvil on a full-size labubu? Starting with level 1, an anvil versus a watermelon, this went exactly as expected. After this was level 2, an anvil versus a full-size traffic light, which was a battle of the heavyweights and ended up like this. And now time for level 3, which is the anvil versus labubu, so I got it ready and dropped it, leading to this. The anvil easily won, but just to be safe, I dropped it again on the crime scene, and while it didn't cause a massive explosion, it punctured the labubu's stomach, officially killing it. So now you know. Let's try to guess if these videos are real or AI. Alright, so we have 3 Asian people laughing. Let me watch this. I think this is actually real. It's pretty natural movement overall. Nope, AI. Okay. Alright, clownfish in an anemone. Alright, I mean, this has to be real, right? It looks pretty legitimate. What? How is that AI? Alright, some wheat blowing in the wind. I mean, that looks pretty real. Okay, cool. This is 100% AI. The speed of the camera moving and just like the entire scene. Okay, never mind. A bird about to take flight. I could see this being real. I'm not noticing like any glitching or anything. No? Alright, somehow this is AI. And then some sort of dissolving agent in water. I mean, if this isn't real, I don't know anything. Okay, alright, there we go. I'm still cooked though. Let's see if you can guess if these videos are real or AI. Alright, so we got a hummingbird. I feel like the detail is too enhanced, so it must be AI. A real video would have like some imperfections to it. Nope, guess I don't know anything. All right, a dartboard, it looks pretty normal. And then the dart hits. Yeah, I would say that's real. Nope, AI, okay. Beach yoga, oh, this is definitely AI. Look at all like the slow movement and stuff. No, somehow real. Wow, this is bad. This ghost is AI for sure. I bet everything on this one. All right, cool. Got a little nervous for a second. And then we got a fish just swimming between reefs. I mean, I'm not seeing anything blatantly AI. I guess it's being real. Nope. What do I know? These are the top pickup lines according to science. So starting off with the worst pickup lines, and any that comment on a specific body part or use pet names like gorgeous lower the response rate by over 80%. Equally bad is self-pity openers like I know you're probably too good for me, but I thought I'd try anyways. In terms of the best openers, and anything posing a playful challenge is strong, like I think I can beat you in mini golf, which also opens the door for a date opportunity. Equally strong is making a name-specific pun. So for instance, if her name is Amy, you want to say, wow, you look amazing. Doing this apparently has a 30% higher chance of conversion. Posing controversial yet lighthearted questions like does pineapple belong on pizza apparently works well because it baits engagement and psychologically feels like the person knows you because they're opening up quickly about their opinions. If you're looking at somebody's photos, finding very small details in one of their photos can lend you a 50% higher chance of starting a conversation, but by far the number one pickup line that somebody can use is I'd love to get to know you, my name is Sam, what's your name, because of how direct it is, which signals high social capital and minimizes cognitive load. So now you know. These are the biggest lawsuits ever. So Volkswagen's Dieselgate scandal in 2016 resulted in $14.7 billion having to be paid out to owners for buybacks. More than this, though, is the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill that same year, which was a $20.8 billion settlement for its damage to the local ecosystem. Even more than this, though, was for Visa and MasterCard, who were charged $38 billion in an antitrust lawsuit from merchants claiming that they charge excessive swipe fees. In 2011, a Texas jury awarded a symbolic $150 billion to the family of a boy who was murdered, though there's not an expectation for that to ever be paid. A big tobacco master settlement agreement involving tobacco companies like Philip Morris resulted in $206 billion paid out to victims to cover their healthcare costs, which is officially the largest official lawsuit in history. Though technically, a woman named Antonia Armato sued the city of New York, various banks, and even a Kmart for $2 undecillion because she was bit by a dog, which was dismissed by the judge immediately, but technically holds the record for the largest legal ask in history. That much money doesn't even exist on Earth. These are the biggest one-hit wonders. So after releasing Somebody That I Used to Know, Gautier didn't want fame, so he retired the name, refused to put ads on the YouTube music video, and went back to playing drums in a grassroots band in Australia. This is similar to the band New Radicals that made the hit song You Get What You Give, with the lead singer hating celebrity culture so much that he disbanded the group while the song was still climbing the charts. Psy made Gangnam Style, which was the most viewed video on YouTube for a while and actually changed how Billboard counts his top songs, but then afterwards never achieved any sort of virality like that again, despite being famous for other songs in Korea. This is the same for the Harlem Shake by Bauer, which also took over the world when it dropped, but he hasn't been able to capture that virality ever since. Vanilla Ice had the first hip-hop song to ever reach #1 on Billboard with Ice Ice Baby, but after facing backlash, he reinvented himself as a home renovation TV host. And finally, Los Del Rio, the creators of the Macarena, have one of the most recognizable songs in history, but unfortunately, after tons of remixes and dances that derive from it, the group was overshadowed and never saw a hit song again. It's a great song though. Can I get a dog walker to walk a human? So I went on some dog walking sites to try to find somebody willing to accommodate my unusual request, but unfortunately, I was receiving rejection after rejection, as I think the premise was just too absurd for a walker to do. That is, until on WAG, I found a walker named Jade, who I actually used in the past, who had experience walking all different kinds of animals, including cows. And so I messaged her and told her I had an interesting animal that needed to be walked, and then when she came over, I told her it was me. And to my surprise, she said it wasn't the first time she did this, and so I put the collar on and I began the walk. And the walk itself was pretty pleasant, as it was nice having the security of a leash in case a gust of wind blew me in the road or something. And the only real complication we encountered was when I had to use the bathroom. And so for this, I went inside because I didn't want to be arrested for public indecency, and finished up my business and then concluded the walk. And then at the end, as any walk goes, I ended up getting chicken jerky as a treat. And I gave a handshake as a paw, so technically a human can be walked. Is it possible to get a full workout in a Dick's? So my goal was to prove that you don't need a gym membership and can only use the on-floor items at a Dick's to burn 150 calories inside of an hour. And so I started in the weights section, which had tons of dumbbells and free weights available to use, and so I opted for a biceps workout by doing various sets of curls with some of the on-floor weights. Afterwards, I tried a machine, but unfortunately it was locked, and so instead I found a barbell and bumper plates to set up for some deadlifts. Here I slept slowly increased the weight and was able to bang out 4 sets of deadlifts one after the other right on the store floor. After this, I decided to do cardio, and so I went over to the treadmills, which were also locked, but I was able to ask for the key to try them out, and after receiving it, I was able to do an entire cardio workout, increasing the speed all the way up to a full sprint until I was essentially at my calorie goal. But I still needed to burn a few more, and so I decided to finish things at the putting green to sink a few putts to get me across the line, and while I unfortunately didn't sink my shots, I did ultimately get over the 150 calorie mark, proving that you can, in fact, get a full workout using only dicks. Can I make an entire video only using the display devices at Best Buy? So to test this, I walked into Best Buy and first went to the video cameras to record myself, and so I inserted an SD card and found a charged one that would support a recording. I recorded a quick video and then I took the SD card out and headed over to the laptops for step 2, uploading the video. Now it was difficult to find a display laptop with an SD port, but eventually after looking I found one and I put it in. Then from here I had to make a YouTube channel, and so I created this account with a profile picture I took on the laptop camera and was able to then upload the video on the display laptop using Best Buy's Wi-Fi in just minutes. As I waited for it to process, I headed over to the Samsung smart fridges because I wanted to witness my in-store video on one of their devices to bring it full circle, and eventually after fidgeting around with it, I ultimately found the video and watched it on the fridge, which means that I completed Best Buy Inception and I was able to make and watch a video in just a single visit. So I guess there really is no need to ever buy your own equipment. Can you bring a Nerf blaster to a shooting range? So to test this, I purchased a high-power Nerf blaster and packed it up in a case and brought it to my local shooting range to see if they would let me in. After walking in and signing some waivers, I was good to go, and I had management open my case to check what was in there, and to my surprise, he was actually cool with it and excited to see how it would perform. I prepared my blaster, excited to see how powerful this thing was, and started with a basic 10-meter target. And to my surprise, this blaster was actually crazy, reaching a 200 FPS and hitting the target easily. And so I backed it up to 20 meters, and it was the same story, and then 30 meters, and the blaster continued to triumph. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't powerful enough to reach 40 meters, but I did have this super booster attachment it came with that increased the range by 50 feet, and after doing so, I was actually able to hit it. So not only can you bring your Nerf blaster to the shooting range, but you'll also be sure to hit your marks. Can you buy out an entire movie theater for yourself? So to test this, I went into an AMC and tried to find a showing that nobody had purchased a ticket for yet, and I came across a matinee for a movie called Undertone that had every ticket available. I tried purchasing every seat, but unfortunately the kiosk only let me get a max of 10 tickets, and so instead I went to the employee who was able to override that and said in theory I could purchase as many tickets as I wanted to. And so I purchased all of the tickets besides the front and back because nobody likes those, got my popcorn, and proceeded into the theater to see what an empty theater for myself would look like. It was predictably empty, and since I owned every single seat, I was able to spread out as much as I wanted to and take advantage of the extra space that I had. I was even able to use my phone with no problem and watch the entire movie uninterrupted, which was a great experience. Now, what did it cost me to do all of this? Well, $276 to manually purchase the amount of tickets needed to have an empty theater. And while I know that's a lot of money, it's still technically cheaper than if you were to do a private showing for about $1,000 all by yourself. So now you know. Can you get an Uber from an Uber Eats driver? So since the Uber Eats tab is in the Uber app, I wonder if it was possible to get the same driver who delivers me food to also drive me somewhere, given that he's technically an Uber Eats driver. So I placed an order and waited for my driver Victor to arrive, and when he did, I asked him if he'd be willing to bring me to the nearest 7-Eleven and back so I could get some groceries, and to my surprise, he said he was down. So I walked to my delivery driver's car, and when I got there, he told me he was also technically an Uber driver when he wasn't delivering, so he truly was a dual threat. And so he actually drove me to 7-Eleven, but I was worried that after I left the car and went into 7-Eleven, he would drive away because technically he didn't need to be there. But luckily, when I got out of the store, he was still there. And so I got in the car and he just drove me back to where he originally picked me up and dropped off my food, completing his 20-minute detour. So I took care of him and sent him on his way, and confirming that you can in fact get an Uber drive from your Uber Eats driver. Can you trust AI to watch your baby? So I found a baby monitor that claims to use AI to detect anomalies in infant behavior in the crib, which had me skeptical, and so I purchased it for $200 along with a realistic looking baby to run some simulations. Starting with its rollover detection, I turned the baby on its side in my makeshift crib, and it actually worked, passing level 1. So now it's time for level 2, face covering detection, and so I covered my baby's face with its bib, but I was disappointed to get no alert despite my baby nearly suffocating. I even put an entire blanket over my baby's face, but absolutely nothing. For level 3, I simulated the baby getting robbed from the crib to see if it would notice my baby leaving the designated zone, and after snatching it, I didn't get a single alert. I was hopeful for level 4 though, as it claims to be able to detect a baby's cry, and after putting on a baby crying video for audio, I did get a notification, so at least that worked. And then for level 5, I wanted to see if it could pick up if my baby was being strangulated or if there was a presence of a sharp object by doing this to the baby, but once again, I didn't get a single alert, failing arguably the most important test. So no, you should not trust AI to watch your baby. Can you trust people in New York City? Well, to test this, I put out a free water bottle stand in the middle of New York City with a sign that says, "Please take one," curious to see if people would buy into my honor system. And so I began observing people going up, and at the start, everybody was abiding by the rule, and even groups of 2 people were only only taking 1 water bottle, which was really encouraging to see. Unfortunately though, this didn't last too long because after about 10 water bottles were taken, a man came up and was the first to break the trust, taking 2 water bottles despite being by himself. Otherwise though, things continued fairly well and New Yorkers weren't abusing the trust, but right as I thought that, another man comes up and completely betrays the social contract by ignoring the rules altogether and picking up some change I had left on the table that people had left for me as tips. And so I decided to shut it down right there, and the final stats were 20 people went up and 2 people defected, which means you can't trust about 10% of people. So now you know. These are canceled celebrities that are popular in other countries. So Roman Polanski fled the US in 1978 following sexual abuse charges and hasn't set foot back here since, but he's considered one of the greatest living directors in France and continues to win French Oscars. Drake Bell leaned into his Mexican fan base following legal issues in 2021 and changed his Instagram handle to Drake Campana and posted exclusively in Spanish for a while. He actually lives there too now and is considered a top artist in Mexico. Woody Allen is considered the golden boy of Spain and regularly receives $1 million grants from the Spanish government to shoot movies there in order to help with tourism. This is similar to Kevin Spacey, who has been revived in Europe and given a ton of casting roles and visionary awards since they're more open to separating the art from the artist there. Rush Hour director Brett Ratner was canceled in 2017 and fled to Israel, where he's been protected and even hangs out with high-ranking officials there since they cleaned his slate. This is actually the same for X-Men director Bryan Singer as well. And finally, Ellen DeGeneres now lives in the UK following her exodus from the US due to a toxic workplace scandal, and she's even viewed there as a comedic legend. So now you know. Here are celebrities that were caught on Google Street View. So Post Malone was caught at a cafe in Paris having lunch in a 2024 Street View picture. Despite blurring his face, it's pretty clearly him with his cowboy hat and boots. The late Brazilian singer Marilia Mendonça was also caught sitting outside of her mother's bar in 2011 talking on the phone next to her brother. Rain Bolt was caught on Street View while in Germany in 2022 with a friend while walking out of a store and actually continued to chase the car, so you can see multiple shots of him running through the streets of Germany, and notably he's not blurred. Sasha Farber from Dancing with the Stars was caught on Street View in LA picking up a fallen trash can, while Mike Myers and Dana Carvey were caught in Plymouth, UK rocking their Wayne's World attire walking up the street. Apparently Tom Cruise can be seen dangling from the Burj Khalifa on some versions of Google Street View, though it seems to have been taken down recently. And then not a celebrity, but I was caught actually on Street View walking around with my fiance, and I was able to pose just in time for the photo, which was a huge life highlight. Pretty cool. Let's try to guess these celebrities that nobody knows. Oh, I feel like I know this guy. Wasn't he the host of America Says? I have no idea what his name is, though. I could have 1,000 guesses and I couldn't get it. John Michael Higgins, okay? I know her, but I have no idea what her name is. Sorry, ma'am. Margot Martindale, all right? I know this guy, too. I just watched a movie with him. I think he was in Valentine's Day. He played the old man. No idea his name, though. Hector Elizondo. Shout out. This is the guy from Wednesday. I don't know his name, though. Luis Guzman. I feel like that was guessable, okay? Oh, this is Catherine Hahn. I actually know her. She's in like a lot of rom-coms. Cool. Giancarlo Esposito, Breaking Bad, The Boys. He's a good actor. I feel like people definitely know him for sure. Yep. And then, I love this guy. I don't know his name, though. James Hong. All right. Hopefully never forget that. I probably will, though. These are celebrities that own islands, so be careful. So Larry Ellison owns 98% of Lanai, which is the 6th largest island in Hawaii. He purchased it for $300 million and has 2 Four Seasons on there and is a fairly popular tourist spot. Richard Branson owns a $50 million island called Necker Island in the British Virgin Islands that he actually rents out to people for $100,000 per night. It has multiple mansions and guest houses supporting dozens of guests. Leonardo DiCaprio owns an island called Blacador Cay in Belize that's meant to be an eco-resort focused on environmental sustainability, while magician David Copperfield has a chain of 11 islands called Musha Cay in the Bahamas that's over 700 acres. Shakira owned a 650-acre island called Bonds Cay in the Bahamas, but she's actually selling it for $30 million because of logistical issues. Tyler Perry and even Johnny Depp also has islands in the Bahamas, with Johnny Depp's called Little Halls Pond Cay that he purchased for $4 million after filming Pirates of the Caribbean. And finally, Jeffrey Epstein's island called Little St. James was sold to a billionaire named Steven Deckoff in 2023 for $60 million, with the goal of it becoming a 5-star luxury resort. Would you visit? These are celebrities that were banned from Disney. So Barack Obama was kicked out of Disneyland when he was in college for smoking cigarettes on the gondola of the old Skyway attraction. Similarly, Robert Downey Jr. was actually arrested at Disneyland for smoking weed on the Incredible Journey attraction. Blake Lively was banned for 1 full year at Disney for trying to sneak into a park by forging tickets. She even spent time in the Disney jail, which is just where the security holds you. Rebel Wilson received a 30-day ban in 2023 for taking a selfie inside of a secret bathroom at Club 33, which is Disney's ultra-exclusive private club. Although they apparently scheduled with her when the best time to have the ban was, so I don't think it was that serious. Leonardo DiCaprio was escorted out of Disneyland in his 20s alongside his friends when he went down the water slide with a spiked belt on, which damaged the ride and caused a ruckus. Bruce Springsteen was even denied access to Disneyland in the 80s because his guitarist refused to remove his bandana, which violated the park's dress code. And finally, Grace Jones received a lifetime ban on all Disney properties after she exposed herself on stage at the Disney House of Blues. Can't be doing that. These are celebrities that are wanted by the FBI. So Ryan Whiting is a former Olympic snowboarder that was on the FBI 10 most wanted fugitives list in 2025 for allegedly running a massive transnational drug trafficking operation. He was actually recently captured though in Mexico. Tupac's aunt, Asada Shakur, was the first woman to be named to the FBI's most wanted terrorist list. She was wanted for killing a state trooper in New Jersey and escaping prison. She fled to Cuba, but she died last year being a fugitive. Frank Sinatra was investigated by the FBI for decades for his alleged ties to the mafia and organized crime figures. And even Michael Jackson was also heavily surveyed during his trials, having over 300 pages of FBI files on him. Muhammad Ali was investigated by the FBI in the 1960s due to his relationship with Islam and refusal of the Vietnam draft. And John Lennon was also heavily tracked around then for his anti-war activism. And finally, Diddy was raided by FBI agents in 2024 after being classified as a major public threat and is now spending the next 4 years in prison. Pretty cool, right? These are celebrities that are officially retired. So Daniel Day-Lewis permanently retired after his role in The Phantom Thread in 2017, but he briefly returned to co-write his son's film in 2025. Afterwards, though, he announced his official retirement for good. Kai Cenat seemingly has retired from streaming so he can better focus on his fashion brand Vivette, while John Cena officially retired from the WWE in 2025, marking the end of his 25-year career. Michael Douglas retired in 2022, being 81 years old to focus on spending time with his family, and Michael Caine officially retired in 2023 for similar reasons now that he's over the age of 90. Jack Nicholson has officially been retired since his role in How Do You Know in 2010 and refuses all scripts that come his way. Gene Hackman retired in 2004 and has since pivoted to a career as a historical novelist. Ian Somerhalder retired from Hollywood in 2019 so he could spend time with his family on his farm, and Bruce Willis retired from acting in 2022 after being diagnosed with aphasia. And finally, Ellen DeGeneres officially retired in 2024 at the end of her final stand-up special and has since moved to the UK. So rest in peace. These are the strangest celebrity addictions. So Katy Perry is addicted to flossing and keeps dozens of floss picks on her person at all times to ensure that she always has clean teeth, while Jessica Simpson only brushes her teeth every other day as she claims that it makes her teeth too slippery. Megan Fox is afraid of flying and can only board a plane if she's listening to Britney Spears in order to comfort her. Speaking of which, Britney Spears is apparently addicted to chewing on ice for comfort. David Beckham has extreme symmetry OCD where everything in his house must be perfectly aligned or in even pairs. He even does this in hotels, and it's reported if he finds 3 cans of soda in his mini fridge, he'll throw one out so that the count is even. Kit Harington has a weird superstition where he scratches his manhood every time he sees an ambulance, while James McAvoy yells "White Rabbit" at midnight on the 1st of every month. Heidi Klum carries a bag of her baby teeth as she believes it gives her good luck during her modeling jobs. And finally, Naomi Campbell does a full chemical scrub of every plane seat that she sits on, bringing surgical gloves and heavy-duty disinfectant wipes. Honestly, I get that. These are celebrities that have really strange fears. So P. Diddy has a fear of long second toes on people's feet, and he used to scan his dates beforehand to ensure that they wouldn't have them. Equally odd, though less weird, is Matthew McConaughey's fear of revolving doors, as he gets anxious when he's near them, thinking he's going to get trapped, allowing him to only use standard entrances. Oprah is afraid of chewing gum from childhood trauma, as her mom used to put gum on the furniture, so she avoids it completely, and it's actually banned from her show. Alfred Hitchcock was famously scared of eggs, and he noted that the sight of a breaking yolk is the most revolting thing he's ever seen. While Megan Fox is deeply averse to paper and keeps a glass of water nearby to ensure that she never has to touch dry paper. Nicole Kidman has a fear of butterflies, while Adele has a fear of seagulls from childhood trauma from a seagull stealing her ice cream, while Billy Bob Thornton has a strange fear of antique furniture and believed that he was killed by some in his former life. And finally, Pamela Anderson has a deep fear of mirrors, despite the fact that she spent her entire career on camera, with lenses effectively just being mirrors. Pretty cool, right? These are companies that almost disappeared. So in 1996, Marvel actually filed for bankruptcy and had to sell the rights to Spider-Man and X-Men just to keep the lights on. Eventually, though, they took a loan out to make Iron Man, and it ended up turning into the most successful movie franchise of all time, now owned by Disney. Lego was losing nearly $1 million a day in 2003 from focusing on other random business lines, but after getting a new CEO, they turned the shop around and now is the world's most profitable toy company. FedEx was hours away from shutting down in the early 70s with only $5,000 in the corporate bank account, but the founder gambled out on blackjack and turned into $27,000 and used that to stay alive a few more weeks to secure funding for $11 million. Domino's was actually voted the worst tasting pizza in America in 2009, and instead of marketing against it, they admitted that their pizza was bad and redesigned it publicly, which now led to them being one of the most successful stocks of the past 15 years. And finally, in 1997, Apple was 90 days away from bankruptcy because of competition from Microsoft, but they famously took a loan from them and focused solely on Macs, leading them to now being worth $4 trillion today. Pretty cool, right? These are companies that are disappearing. So Saks Global, the parent company of Saks Fifth Avenue, Food, Neiman Marcus, and Bergdorf Goodman filed for bankruptcy in January and plans to close most of its Saks Off 5th and Last Call locations to focus only on high-end luxury. Eddie Bauer declared bankruptcy in February and is currently in the process of liquidating all 174 physical locations to instead focus exclusively on their online and wholesale business. Francesca's declared their second bankruptcy around the same time in February and is also moving to full liquidation, closing all 400 remaining stores in the United States. Wendy's is aiming to close up to 300 locations by the end of 2026, as are Macy's and Walgreens, which are closing 150 and 500 stores respectively. Spirit Airlines is going through their second bankruptcy and is reducing their fleet from 214 aircrafts to 80 in order to stay afloat. JCPenney filed for bankruptcy again in December, citing unsustainable debt and lower mall traffic. Yankee Candle is also closing dozens of stores for similar reasons. And finally, even iRobot, the creator of the Roomba, filed for bankruptcy after its acquisition by Amazon got blocked. So not even robots are safe in this economy. These are companies that close on purpose. So B&H is one of the world's largest tech retailers, but checkout is disabled and the checkout button actually disappears every Friday evening through Saturday evening in observance of the Sabbath. So not only are the physical stores closed, but the website as well. Chick-fil-A closes every Sunday to allow its employees to eat and worship if they choose. Despite being closed though for 15% of the year, they still generate more revenue per store than any other fast food restaurant. Also in line with Sunday closures is Hobby Lobby, which closes all 1,000 of their stores for similar reasons. REI closes every single store on Black Friday to encourage people to opt out and go hiking outdoors. It was initially a one-time stunt, but turned into a policy 10 years ago. Similarly, Lush Cosmetics closed its social media accounts in 48 countries to ensure that the mental health of customers was being prioritized. Publix is known to be one of the first stores to close during Florida's hurricanes to ensure employee safety. And finally, In-N-Out is one of the only fast food chains that closes on holidays to ensure that the employees can spend time with their families. Pretty cool, right? These are companies that make two very different things. So in addition to making their Galaxy smartphones and microchips, Samsung also makes howitzer tanks and skyscrapers. Their construction arm actually built the Burj Khalifa. Equally odd is Yamaha, which makes world-class pianos and musical instruments, but also make high-performance motorcycles and boat engines. Mitsubishi is known for their SUVs and air conditioners, but they're also the same Mitsubishi that makes the Uniball pens, and they're also one of the world's largest distributors of canned tuna. Similarly, Volkswagen, in addition to their cars, produce more sausages than cars every single year. The same Guinness that makes the drought beer is also responsible for Guinness World Records. One day, a brewery director had a bar disagreement about who could do something the fastest and coined it a Guinness World Record when he did it, which became adopted. Michelin is one of the big three tire manufacturers in the world, but it's also the global leader in fine dining review with their Michelin star system that started over letting customers know if places were worth driving for. And finally, Nintendo used to not only produce video games, but they were also behind multiple love hotels in Japan that ultimately failed. Pretty cool, right? These are companies that were saved by rebrands. So Old Spice was historically a grandpa fragrance for decades and was losing market share up until they did their iconic Manly commercials that doubled sales and made them popular amongst all age groups. Burberry had a chav reputation in the UK in the early 2000s and was associated with hooligans and even banned from many bars. But in the 2010s, they successfully pivoted to their roots of high luxury fashion through new creative directions and celebrity endorsements. Target used to be viewed as a junk retailer discount store similar to Kmart in the 1990s, but they ended up hiring higher end designers, added a Starbucks inside most of them, and changed their mantra to expect more, pay less to make themselves seem more premium. Sierra Mist was considered incredibly boring and safe by Gen Z focus groups, and so they rebranded completely to Starry to lean into a more cool and hip image, which ultimately worked. And finally, Abercrombie was voted the most hated brand in America in 2016 because of its cool kids, dark, cologne-filled feel and branding. So they ultimately pivoted to be more inclusive and focused around style and comfort, and has now seen its stock surge by over 280% in 2023 alone. You love to see it. These are company rebrands that completely backfired. So Cracker Barrel spent $700 million modernizing its brand by replacing their logo, remodeling stores away from the vintage decor, and switching to reheating food for efficiency. And as a result, they lost over $100 million in market value immediately, and after just 4 days, they reverted back to their old ways. Jaguar completely reset internally and started promoting itself carless with neon coloring and electric-only cars that were double the price of their traditional cars. They replaced their logo as well, and since they currently have no cars in their inventory, sales dropped by 98% in 2025. X lost over 70% of its valuation figure and dozens of major advertisers following its rebrand away from Twitter. Usage nowadays, though, is actually up and apparently regained all of that and is back to pre-X days. Gap spent $100 million to randomly change their logo without explanation and received massive backlash, so much so that they reverted back to the original just 6 days later. And finally, Tropicana redesigned their logo to remove the orange with a straw in it in favor of a generic juice glass design, and it lost $300 million in 1 month and had to revert back to their original concept just a few days after. These are content houses that failed. So the Hype House failed because creators felt burnt out and forced to film constantly, leading to low morale, on top of no financial incentive since the larger creators were losing money when they could have been making more solo. Despite this, it's still the most successful house in history, having been the launch pad for Charli D'Amelio, Addison Rae, and Alex Warren, and is technically still around. FaZe Clan disbanded in 2025 after a new 20 20% revenue share contract was proposed by new management, with the creators deciding that they didn't need the content group anymore for success, and they left, destroying what was one of the longest organizations in the content space. Jake Paul's Team 10 House failed after legal issues stemming from neighbor complaints as well as toxic work environments for many of the members, while Ricegum's Cloud House disbanded after a falling out from the founding members and no long-term plan beyond their YouTube videos. The Sway House was a short-lived Hype House competitor that ran into legal problems and members who chose to go down more individual routes. And finally, the Vlog Squad failed following a crane accident involving Jeff Wittick that left David Dobrik in bad water, as well as poor diversification with no other strong members carrying the slack. Rest in peace. These are the craziest celebrity contracts. So Tom Cruise has a no toys rule in all of his contracts that bans his likeness from being used for any merchandise, particularly action figures. So there's no official Top Gun or Mission Impossible toys out there that have him on it. Shirley Temple's contracts didn't allow her to age, and it's thought that studios would actively try to stunt her growth and hide any maturing features to keep her looking like a little girl for as long as possible. Adriana Caselotti, the original voice of Snow White in 1937, had an airtight contract with Disney that blacklisted her from appearing in any other films or even singing on the radio so that her voice would only ever be Snow White. James Gandolfini was reportedly paid $3 million from HBO to not take a role in The Office in order to preserve his legacy as Tony Soprano. Van Halen had contracts with their venues demanding bowls of M&Ms with all the brown ones removed, not because they cared about the candy, but because if they missed the M&M rule, then the band knew that they probably likely messed up some of the safety rigging systems that were buried nearby in the contract. And finally, Uma Thurman's contracts allegedly stipulated that she must have the biggest dressing room, and if not, she had to be upgraded immediately. That's crazy. These are the craziest death rituals around the world. So in Madagascar, upon dying, the public exhumes the corpses and wraps them in silk shrouds and dances with them to live music as part of their Dama Dihana ritual. It's meant to be a joyful celebration of the life of the deceased. In the high altitudes of Tibet, bodies are placed on a mountain peak to be consumed by vultures as a final act of generosity to the world to sustain other living beings. The Tanah Toraja people of Indonesia will actually live alongside the bodies of their deceased loved ones inside their homes for months or even years, bringing them food, a change of clothes, and even talking to them. Also in Indonesia is the Ikipali tribe, which amputates their own fingers when a close relative dies in order to appease the spirits and represent their emotional suffering. The Yanomami people of the Amazon rainforest cremate bodies and then drink their bone ash in order to keep their spirit alive within themselves. And finally, the Igorot people of the Philippines vertically bury loved ones off the side of limestone cliffs because the higher the coffin, the closer the soul is to the ancestral spirits. Pretty cool, right? These are the craziest lawsuits in history. So a Nebraska senator named Ernie Chambers sued God in 2007 for causing floods, earthquakes, and tornadoes. The judge ultimately dismissed it though because God doesn't have a legal home address, meaning he couldn't properly serve the papers. A man named Robert Brock sued himself in 1995 for $5 million for getting drunk and committing crimes, claiming that his religion prohibited alcohol, but ultimately it was dismissed. In 2018, the Rotondo family sued their 30-year-old son Michael so that he would move out of their house after they served him with 5 formal eviction notices. The parents ultimately won in court and he had to move out. A DC judge named Roy Pearson sued his local dry cleaners for $67 million after they lost a pair of his pants, and he argued their satisfaction guaranteed sign was broken, but he lost his job. In 2009, a German man named Christian Duvet sued a New Zealand company that used his likeness in an ad campaign because he claimed that it made him look boring and uncool. He ultimately actually won the settlement. And finally, in 2006, a man named Alan Heckard sued Michael Jordan for $832 million because he claimed that he looked like him, causing permanent emotional injury. He obviously lost. These are the craziest things that were built for movies. So Christopher Nolan planted 500 acres of corn outside of Calgary for the farmhouse scenes in Interstellar to avoid using CGI. He was later able to harvest and sell the corn as well for a profit, justifying the price. He also built a 1,000-ton rotating multi-million-dollar hallway for this scene in Inception. For Titanic, James Cameron literally built a Titanic replica that was 90% of the original size that could be tilted and sunk into a mega water tank in Mexico to simulate the event. One of the most expensive film sets ever was a $50 million giant water city off the coast of Hawaii for the movie Waterworld. Weather kept breaking it apart though, making it so costly to maintain that it ended up being one of the most expensive movies ever at the time. Though worse than this, and the most expensive movie project of all time was on the set of Cleopatra, in which they spent $450 million to recreate the city of Alexandria and the Roman Forum in London. And finally, The Matrix Reloaded built a 1.5 mile road on an old Navy base just so they could have total control of the stunts. Pretty cool, right? These are people who confessed to crimes but didn't actually do them. So Henry Lee Lucas confessed to over 600 murders in Texas in the 1980s despite only doing 3 of them. He confessed so he could get better food in prison and have more attention on him, and this led to likely hundreds of serial killers being on the loose during that time because he selfishly took the fall to get more strawberry milkshakes milkshakes in jail. The Central Park Five were 5 teenagers in the 80s who collectively hallucinated and told the police what they wanted to hear in hopes of it getting them out, but actually landed them in prison for 10 years until the actual attacker confessed in 2002. Christopher Tapp was interrogated for over 100 hours regarding a 1996 murder and failed a polygraph test that cops leveraged to convince him that he just forgot the murder. A 72 IQ man named Jesse Miskelly gave a false confession over a crime in 1993 after being interrogated for hours without lawyers, pressuring him to admit to a falsehood. And finally, Timothy Evans was a low IQ man from the UK who confessed to killing his wife and baby after being coerced and was hanged for it via death penalty before it came out that the real killer was a different man the entire time. That's terrible. These are cultures that are disappearing. So the country of Kiribati is expected to be uninhabitable within a few decades because of rising sea levels. The government has even already purchased land in Fiji for when this inevitably happens. Inuits in the Arctic are also disappearing because of melting ice, which is displacing their camps, destroying traditional cultural methods, and even sidelining their language. The Ainu people in Japan are becoming extinct as they were pressured to assimilate, and there's only a few fluent speakers of the language left. This is similar to the Ayapaneco of Mexico, which at one point only had 2 fluent speakers left of their language. Tibetans in China are slowly being replaced with Han Chinese settlers who have overtaken political power and imposed their cultural practice on the native Tibetans. And the Maasai people of Kenya that are traditionally semi-nomadic are disappearing as land restrictions and urbanization emerges. And this has become the fate of dozens of cultures, and it's thought actually that every 2 weeks a language dies as we move towards globalization. In fact, by 2100, nearly half of the languages in the world will be extinct, and in another 100 years after that, nearly all languages and cultures are projected to converge into one as universal language and global connectivity occurs. That's crazy. These are the deadliest rides in history. So the Haunted Castle was a ride at Six Flags Great Adventure in which a fire broke out because the entire castle was made of combustible materials and lacked smoke detectors and sprinklers. 8 teenagers lost their lives, making it the deadliest in U.S. amusement park history in 1984. The Big Dipper in the UK was a roller coaster in the 1970s, responsible for the worst roller coaster disaster in history, in which 5 people died and 13 others seriously injured after the lift cable snapped as the train was at the top of the climb. The emergency brake also failed, causing the train to roll backwards and derail, crashing into one of the other cars. Verrückt Water Slide in Kansas was the tallest water slide in the world at that point and was responsible for the decapitation of a young boy who flew off and struck the metal safety. They closed the park 1 year afterwards in 2018. Mindbender was a ride in the West Edmonton Mall in Canada that was the world's largest indoor triple loop roller coaster, but in 1986 the train derailed thanks to missing bolts, leading to wheels flying off mid-ride around a turn, ejecting 3 passengers who ultimately passed away. And finally, Derby Racer was responsible for up to 5 total deaths because of riders routinely standing up and jumping between moving cars, with employees even betting on it at one point because of the frequency. That's crazy. These are the deadliest video games. So in 2017, 2 guys were 1v1ing in Call of Duty when the loser decided to swat the other player. Unfortunately though, the address was wrong and the cops pulled up on a random person who had no idea what was going on, and they killed him for not cooperating. A man named Chris Staniforth died after playing Halo for 12 hours straight thanks to a blood clot in his leg. Worse than this though was a Taiwanese man named Cheng Rong Yu who was playing League of Legends for 23 hours straight without sleep before collapsing and dying. And then also a Korean man named Kim Kung Jae who died after playing Mew for 86 hours straight without sleep or food. In 2003, an Alabama man committed Grand Theft Auto in real life, killing 3 people and stealing a car, stating, "Life is like GTA, everybody's gotta die sometime." A 16-year-old named Daniel Petrick killed his mom and almost killed his dad because they took away his Halo 3 disc. This is similar to a 10-year-old boy who killed his mother after she refused to buy him a VR headset on Amazon, and then he ended up taking her Amazon password afterward and buying it for himself. And finally, an arcade game from the 80s called Polybius apparently caused everyone who played it to experience seizures, amnesia, night terrors, and some people even death, with the psychological aspect being so bad that they had to ban it forever. That's crazy. Here are diseases that no longer exist. So smallpox was officially eradicated in 1980, making it the first and only human disease that is completely wiped out. It killed 300 million people in the 1900s, but thanks to vaccinations, it now only exists in labs in the US and Russia. Guinea worm disease is expected to officially be the second human disease ever eradicated, as there's only 10 human cases left in the world, while in the 1980s there was millions of cases per year. Polio is down 99.9% since 1988, and wild polio only remains in 2 countries. At this point, it's only a matter of time before it's completely solved for. Hepatitis C is the only chronic viral illness that we can now completely cure with a short course of oral medication, solving over 95% of cases. It's not completely eradicated, but it's medically solved. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia also has had great development, as the 5-year survival rate for the once fatal cancer is now over 90% for children. And finally, for about 26 years, the US was measles free, but recently it's made a comeback thanks to a slippage in vaccination rates that have caused it to spread to now thousands again. Otherwise though, pretty cool. These are the most disturbing world records. So the world record for the most people killed by a serial killer belongs to Luis Garavito of Colombia, who murdered over 300 children and died in prison in 2023. Technically though, the person with the most kills is Soviet executioner Vasily Blokin, who killed over 7,000 Polish officers in 28 nights during the Katyn massacre. The deadliest medical error in history was in Lübeck, Germany, when 251 infants were accidentally injected with live tuberculosis instead of the vaccine, killing over a third. And the deadliest natural disaster in history belongs to the 1931 China floods, which killed 4 million people from drowning, starvation, and disease. The highest BAC ever recorded in somebody was a Polish man at 1.48%, which is 4 times over the lethal dose, though he didn't actually die from the alcohol poisoning. Kobayashi set the record for the most cow brains eaten with 17.7 pounds in just 15 minutes, while Ken Edwards has the record for the most cockroaches eaten with 36 eaten in 1 minute. And finally, the largest collection of human skulls is in the catacombs of Paris, with more than 6 million people in the underground ossuary. Pretty cool, right? Do delivery drivers actually follow the drop-off instructions? For test 1, I said, deliver me my pizza through the window.
Hey, can you throw it here? The door's broken. Nice. Good throw, man.
That was a success. For test 2, I wrote, find me in the house because I'm hiding and deliver my food. And for this, I hid behind an invisibility shield to make it extra hard.
Hey, you found me. Good job, bro.
He actually found me. And for test 3, I asked them to take a bite of my food before it arrived, and I tried this not 1, not 2, but 3 times, and none of them would do it. Eventually, though, I found a driver at Master Pizza who followed my instructions to a T. So I guess it depends who you get, but most drivers will in fact follow the drop-off instructions. Do you know these Gen Alpha celebrities? Let's see. Probably not, honestly. Oh, she's from Cat's Eye. I have no idea what her name is. Yoonchae Jung, okay. Isn't that Ronaldo's son? I think his name is Ronaldo, right? Cristiano Ronaldo Jr., okay. All right, not bad so far. It ends here, though. No idea. Malachi Barden, okay. No clue. Freya Sky, all right. That's Rakai. I know he's a Twitch streamer, right? Cool. I don't know. Eliana Walmsley. Nell Fisher. Okay. Kyler Emery. I have no idea who this is. Deja Clark. All right, shout out. Let's see if you know these Gen Alpha terms. Choppelganger. So I've never heard this, but I think it's just like a chop doppelganger. It's like an ugly doppelganger. Ugly lookalike or something. Yeah, an ugly lookalike. Okay, nice. Get sendy. That's like full sending something, right? To like go for it. To go all in confidently. Cool. Clocking. Like if you clock somebody, you're just like, you got them. Like you're picking up on something. Recognizing or noticing something. Yep. Negative ors, just like no swag, like your beat basically, right? Bad vibes, okay. 6-7's meaningless. I don't even know. Yeah, literally, no definition. Looks maxing is just optimizing your looks. Optimizing appearance, okay, basically perfect. Mog, that's just like being better than somebody, right? You're just like more attractive and stuff. To outclass somebody in looks or presence, okay, perfect. And then lore. Lore's a real word. This is like background, right? Bam. All right, perfect. Does low power mode really save battery? So to test this, I used my phone for exactly 1 hour on low power mode, dividing the time evenly across watching a 4K video on YouTube, playing a mobile game, scrolling on my Instagram feed, searching things up on Safari, and streaming music on Spotify. Now there seemed to be a slight performance hit from low power mode because certain videos, for instance, took slightly longer to load, and I had a quick glitch or two. But overall, I was pretty shocked that despite doing all these different tasks for an hour, I only ended up losing 6% of battery. And so afterwards, I tested the same exact task, this time on normal power mode, even down to watching the same exact videos and playing the same exact mobile game to create a level playing field, and it actually started off fine with my phone only losing 4% in the first 30 minutes, but after the full hour pass, I ended up losing a total of 10%, which means that, while marginal, you actually get about 67% more battery life if you switch to low power mode if you ever need to maximize your juice. So now you know. These are emergency numbers that everybody should know. So 741-741 is the texting version of 911 where you can enter a text-based counseling session if you don't want to speak out loud. In many buildings, if you dial 933 on the office phone, it will trigger an automated voice that reads you back your exact location in case you're ever kidnapped. 911 operators will use this to know exactly where you are in a building. This number is called a pep talk number, and you'll hear kindergartners giving you life advice or words of encouragement if you're ever upset. And if you call this number, then an AI voice will repeat your phone number back to you so you know if your caller ID is working correctly. VHF channel 16 is the internal distress frequency. So if you're on a boat, this is the 911 of the sea to broadcast to the Coast Guard. If you're in other countries outside of the Americas, then 112 is your safest bet to remember, as that's the global standard for emergencies, though 999 is still used in the UK, Ireland, and Singapore. And finally, if your car is ever stuck on a railroad track, don't call 911 first, but rather find the blue sign with the cross ID phone number on it, which will connect you to dispatchers who will be able to stop the train in its track, potentially saving your life. So now you know. These are emergency sounds that everybody should know. So this sound is an ambulance siren, which means there's a medical emergency nearby, so you should pull over immediately, while this tone, which is often louder and a deeper tone, is a fire truck siren for a fire or a rescue. This sound is a tornado siren, and it means to retreat to safety immediately because it's already coming, while this one is to let the public know that an earthquake is underway and to ensure that you stay safe. If you ever hear this siren go off, it means to prepare for flooding because it's coming quickly, and if you ever hear this emergency siren, it means there's a tsunami and you should get to high ground. In many towns, this signal indicates to volunteer firefighters that it's time to go to the station, or it could just be a noon whistle to tell everybody it's lunchtime, while this sound lets towns know that there's been a hazardous material spill, so you better mask up. The iconic air raid siren sounds like this, and if you hear this, it means we're under an active attack and you should probably get moving. And finally, if you ever hear this siren, it's probably too late because it means we're already under a nuclear attack. Pretty cool, right? These are everyday things that were invented by companies. So Santa being overweight and donning a red and white suit was invented by Coca-Cola in the 1930s to look wholesome for their ads. Prior to that, he was thin and wore green, blue, or even brown. The importance of breakfast was pushed by General Foods and Beech-Nut so that they can sell their cereal more. Somebody even paid 5,000 doctors to sign a statement saying that a heavy breakfast with bacon and eggs is better than a light one so they can sell more pork products. The diamond company De Beers is responsible for diamond engagement rings, as in the 1940s they came up with a marketing campaign slogan, "A diamond is forever." They ultimately linked the size and cut of a diamond to a man's success and love for his girl. Previously, proposals didn't include this. Women used to not regularly shave their armpits or legs until Gillette ran ads in 1915 saying that hair in those locations was unfeminine. Similarly, women used to not double wash their hair until Procter & Gamble added the word repeat on the bottle so they could double their sales. And finally, the concept of a 40-hour work week was started by Ford in the 1920s so that people had more free time and thus needed to buy more cars to get around, as previously people were working 60 hours across 6 days. Pretty cool, right? These are fast food ideas that completely failed. So Burger King experimented with waiter service in the 1990s, offering popcorn as appetizers and steak sandwiches as entrees, but customers immediately rejected it as they preferred speed over service. Wendy's tried to become a buffet around this time by creating a super bar with a salad station, a taco station, and a pasta station, but also nobody wanted this. McDonald's has historically flopped on dozens of food items like the Arch Deluxe, which was an adult burger, adding Dijon mayo and peppered bacon atop the patty, and the Hula Burger, which was literally just a pineapple slice topped with cheese on a bun. Taco Bell made a seafood salad in the 1980s that had shrimp, whitefish, and snow crab to compete with the Filet-O-Fish, but customers were rightfully scared of having room temperature seafood. Taco Bell also even offered at one point their own burgers called Bell Beefers, which was just ground beef on a hamburger bun, but nobody was going to Taco Bell for burgers. And finally, McDonald's had an entire Italian menu in the 1980s with items like McLasagna, McSpaghetti, and even McPizza, but the long wait times made it nearly impossible to properly make them. Pretty cool, right? Here are fake places that actually exist. So Central Perk is an official coffee shop in Boston and now New York City that was originally based on the coffee shop in Friends. Similarly, there's a few quickie marts from The Simpsons across the United States, specifically in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and Orlando. We can even purchase Simpson-themed items like Duff Beer. Bubblegum Shrimp Company was a fictional restaurant chain from Forrest Gump that has since turned into an actual restaurant chain with dozens of locations worldwide serving shrimp. Casa Bonita, which was parodied by South Park many times, went bankrupt but was actually revived by the South Park creators who now own it and made it completely like they depicted it in the show. Perhaps more iconic than this, though, is Holiday Inn, which was originally a fictional hotel that was only open for holidays in the 1942 movie Holiday Inn, and has gone on to become a real thing and arguably the most successful hotel chain in the entire world. And finally, Los Pollos Hermanos from Breaking Bad is an actual restaurant that can be visited under the name Twisters that serves slightly different food from the show, but otherwise has the same front and inside as you'll see in the show. Pretty cool, right? These are the final notes that were left by famous people. So before the author Virginia Woolf drowned herself in 1941, she left farewell letters to her husband and sister, with the last line reading, "I don't think two people could have been happier than we have been." Journalist Hunter Thompson left a note in which he said 67, that is 17 years past 50, 17 more than I needed or wanted, boring, before taking his life at age 67. Kurt Cobain's final note read, "It's better to burn out than fade away," quoting Neil Young, while Vincent van Gogh wrote, "The sadness will last forever," before taking his life as written to his brother Theo. Avicii's last note in his rehab journal before his death in 2008 read, "The shedding of the soul is the last attachment before it restarts," and Anthony Bourdain's final text message to his assistant said okay. Before boarding a plane that crashed in 1985, Ricky Nelson wrote "Life is strange sometimes," making it one of the most eerie. And finally, the founder of Kodak, George Eastman, who made photography accessible to the masses, left this note stating, "To my friends, my work is done. Why wait?" before passing away from a self-inflicted wound. So rest in peace. Here are famous people you've never heard of. So Susan Bennett is the voice actress behind Siri and has since technically been in direct communication with over 1 billion people through her voice. Thomas Midgley Jr. was an engineer responsible for developing leaded gasoline and Freon, both of which destroy the ozone, and he's said to have had the most disastrous impact on the atmosphere of any single organism in Earth's history. Vasily Arkhipov was a Soviet Navy officer who, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, refused to launch a nuclear torpedo against a US destroyer, which arguably stopped World War III and nuclear fallout. Norman Borlaug was an agronomist who developed disease-resistant wheat that saved over 1 billion people from starvation in India and Pakistan, making him one of the most important people in history. Also important, though, was Maurice Hillman, who single-handedly developed 40 vaccines, including those for measles, mumps, Hep A and B, and chickenpox, meaning that nearly everybody carries his work in their bloodstream. And finally, Justin Rosenstein developed the like for Facebook, which means that that product across all social media platforms has been interacted with hundreds of billions of times. Pretty cool, right? These are fictional characters based on real people. So the original Iron Man was based on Howard Hughes, a billionaire inventor and aviator, though the recent one in films was actually modeled after Elon Musk, with him even making an appearance in the second movie. The Joker is based on the actor in a 1928 film called The Man Who Laughs, who had a permanent grin carved onto his face, while Tony Soprano is actually based off of a real mob boss named Vincent Palermo, who also lived in New Jersey. Rocky Balboa was based off of a relatively unknown fighter named Chuck Wepner, who managed to knock down Muhammad Ali in last 15 rounds with him. And Indiana Jones is based on Hiram Bingham III, a professor who rediscovered Machu Picchu and wore a fedora. Sherlock Holmes is based on Dr. Joseph Bell, who was the author's professor who was able to look at a patient and accurately guess their occupation and habits just from looking at them. And even Miss Piggy was based on Peggy Lee, a jazz singer who had a diva stage presence and blonde hair. And finally, Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs were all based on the notorious serial killer Ed Gein. Quite the influencer. These are names that used to be insults. So if your name was Jack, you used to be associated with low-level peasants and they were called commoners and nobodies. Eventually, though, people realized that there were Jacks in every job and it became a prefix for anything do-it-all like Jack of all trades or a jackknife. This is actually similar to Jill, which used to mean a loose woman who was unremarkable, but thanks to the nursery rhyme pairing it with Jack, it became a cool name again. Tom used to refer to a simple-minded animal like a tomcat or a tom turkey and was synonymous with dumb, but by the 1700s it became the go-to name for a generic male character and a bit more mainstream. Abigail used to be the name of a low-ranking member of society or even a servant thanks to characters in plays, but after 200 years it eventually shed the stigma thanks to popular successful Abigails, and it's now relatively popular again. Calling somebody a maverick used to equate with calling somebody worthless thanks to a rancher named Maverick who refused to brand his calves. Eventually, though, it became a synonym for trailblazer after people started to think that the rancher was cool for doing his own thing. And finally, if your name is Guy, you used to be mocked as a terrorist thanks to a man named Guy Fawkes who tried to blow up the British Parliament in the 1600s. Pretty cool, right? This is food that used to be banned. So in the 1900s, margarine had to be dyed bright pink so consumers wouldn't mistake it for pure butter. It wasn't until 1967 that the dairy industry decided to stop fighting against it. Absinthe was banned in the United States and Europe up until 2007 because it was thought to have caused hallucinations and insanity due to the wormwood that was in it. Blackcurrant was banned in the United States until 2003 because they produced spores that killed white pine trees. This is actually why purple food in the United States is grape flavored, while in the UK and other countries it's blackcurrant. Red dye number 2 was banned in the United States in 1976 because it was found to have caused intestinal tumors in rats. It was for this reason that the US changed to instead adopt red 40 and red 3. It's also the reason that M&Ms temporarily killed off their red M&M for 10 years back in the 70s and 80s. Kinder Surprise eggs have been banned in the United States since 1938 because they violate our no toys and food policy, though Kinder Joy eggs have circumvented the law since they now have the toy and the cream in 2 separate halves. And finally, haggis was banned in the United States in 1971 because we're not allowed to eat livestock lungs, but I don't think anybody's complaining about that. These are foods that are named after celebrities. So the Shirley Temple is named after the child star Shirley Temple so that she was able to have a mocktail while she was out to dinner with her fellow movie stars. She actually ended up hating it though, and even sued sodas for using her likeness around it. Earl Grey tea is named after Charles Grey, a British prime minister in the 1830s, and oysters Rockefeller are named after John D. Rockefeller, the world's richest man, due to the richness of the sauce. The Caesar salad isn't actually named after Julius Caesar, but rather Caesar Cardini, a restaurateur in Mexico 100 years ago after he accidentally made it during a dinner rush. Similarly, the Cobb salad isn't named after baseball player Ty Cobb, but rather Robert Cobb, the owner of the famous Hollywood Brown Derby restaurant, who made it as a late night snack for himself using leftovers. Fettuccine Alfredo was named after the famous chef Alfredo in Rome, and pavlova was named after the Russian ballerina Anna Pavlova to honor in the 1920s. The Granny Smith apple is named after the famous Australian botanist Maria Ann Smith following her discovery. And finally, the Arnold Palmer drink, which is made by mixing iced tea and lemonade, is famously named after Arnold Palmer, the legendary golfer, after he would order that drink at the bar. Pretty cool, right? These are foods that have secretly changed, so let's see if you noticed. So Frito-Lay secretly changed the bag weight from 9.75 ounces to 9.25 ounces while keeping the price the same. They redesigned the bags to be slightly narrower but still look as tall, but they have roughly 5 to 10 chips less per bag. Gatorade did something similar in that the newest bottle is more concave and dropped from 32 ounces to 28 ounces, shaving off 12% of the serving while keeping the price the same. Late last year, McDonald's actually changed the Big Mac bun to a softer brioche and added more Big Mac sauce by default in an effort to improve the quality of the burger as part of their Best Burger initiative. Reese's allegedly swapped out milk chocolate for compound coatings and replaced real peanut butter with peanut butter style cream in many products. As a result, it no longer says milk chocolate on a lot of the packaging. Oreo has reduced packaging and cookie size marginally so that the double stuff is effectively the new regular Oreo and Mega Stuff is now the new double stuff. And finally, Tropicana crops have been hit by a greening disease, meaning that many of the juices will still be 100% juice, but a blend from multiple regions to compensate. I knew something was up. These are foods that would kill celebrities. So Ariana Grande is severely allergic to tomatoes and had to cancel shows because her throat closed after eating them, while Justin Bieber has a severe gluten allergy and had a near-death experience on the set of CSI in 2011 when he was hospitalized after eating it. Steve Martin is severely allergic to shellfish, as is Bethany Frankel, who actually spent 2 days in the ICU and almost died after eating fish soup. Similarly, Bill Hader is severely allergic to peanuts and was rushed to the hospital on the set of The Skeleton Twins after mistakenly eating a peanut butter cookie. Malia Obama is also badly allergic to peanuts, forcing the White House to have strict peanut-free protocols for dinners. Khloe Kardashian is interestingly allergic to coconut, while Drew Barrymore is apparently allergic to garlic, and Nicole Kidman has a life-threatening allergy to strawberries, and Sabrina Carpenter is severely allergic to apples and peaches. And finally, Margot Robbie is allergic to egg whites and has to swap chicken eggs with duck eggs whenever she has to eat an egg on set. Pretty cool, right? Here are things you can get for free on your birthday. So at Starbucks, you get a free drink or food item, while Jersey Mike's will give you a free regular sub. Buffalo Wild Wings will give you 6 free wings during your birthday month, which is pretty lenient, while Nothing Bun Cakes will give you an entire mini bun cake for free with no strings attached. At Sephora and Ulta, you can get free gift sets, typically mini skincare or makeup packages, while The Body Shop gives you a $10 voucher with no minimum spend, meaning you can get a full-sized item for $0. Typically, national parks will let you in for free on your birthday, along with federal holidays, and if you say it's your birthday at participating hotel chains, you can expect a nice room upgrade. The largest birthday value from any restaurant belongs to Benihana, which will give you a $30 certificate to eat there. Second to this is Fogo de Chao, which gives you $25 towards the Churrasco experience, assuming you have a minimum spend of $30. Technically though, Medieval Times has the highest value of any place though, offering a free $70 admission ticket, assuming you go with another paying adult. Happy birthday. These are good things that were done by terrible people. So Adolf Hitler was extremely anti-smoking and led public health campaigns in Germany, including some of the first large-scale studies linking smoking to cancer. He also created the Autobahn, which inspired the US to create the interstate highway system that we use today. Mao Zedong created the Barefoot Doctors Program, which sent over 1 million healthcare workers to the countryside, which in turn contributed to life expectancy nearly doubling and increased literacy rates. Mussolini signed a treaty with the Vatican, which essentially ended the war between Italy and the Pope, which had been tense for 60 years, improving religious relations. Hirohito was a well-educated marine biologist that discovered many species of marine life and published scientific articles that contribute to botany. And Idi Amin was surprisingly a strong women's rights advocate and appointed female ambassadors and high court judges. And finally, Gaddafi in Libya created the world's largest irrigation project called the Great Man-Made River, which provided fresh water to the country and made desert regions habitable for thousands of people. Even a broken clock. Let's try to guess how much these websites make. Pokeen.com. Okay, so Pokemon card shops, I know they do super well, especially have like all versions of the cards like it looks like they do. Maybe like 2 million? 4.3 million. Wow. Okay, that's impressive. All right, kidsandcoffee.love. Oh, that's a cool idea. It's like an indoor playground and cafe for kids and parents. I mean, I don't know, 500K? 1.5 million. Wow, all right. Modernbreadandbagel.com. So a gluten-free bakery and restaurant. I don't know. I mean, the website looks great, but it can't be more than like 1 million, right? 3.9 million. Lovehershop.com. So we have women's athleisure. Looks like some high-performance leggings and like activewear. I'll go 1.5 million. 1.7 million, okay. Plannerkate.com. Okay, so planner stickers to help organization. That's a cool concept. Let's go like 1.6 here. 1.8 million, of course. And all these websites were created on Wix.com. Now they have a new website creation platform, Wix Harmony, where you can generate a full website from a prompt and still have complete control to customize and make it 100% yours. So what's your $1 million business? Let's try to guess the name of these D-list celebrities. That's Tila Tequila. She used to be pretty popular. That's like a millennial pull, though. I don't think anybody under the age of 20 will know her. She was like Paris Hilton. Cool. I would not count Fred as a D-list celebrity. He's probably B-list. He was like the most subscribed YouTuber at one point. Shout out to Fred, man. Lucas Cruikshank, okay. Belle Delphine. I don't know what she's up to nowadays. Probably wouldn't look it up either, honestly. Nice. Oh, I know who this is. He's a singer. What's his name? Is this Omi, right? Someone like that? Tayo Cruz. Oh, duh. King Batch. He's probably C-list, maybe B-list. I feel like everyone knows King Batch. He's an OG. Okay, cool. Oh, this guy's like the perfect D-list celebrity because I know him because he's from This Is the End. I know his face, but I don't know his name. Jay Baruchel. All right, congrats. And then I've never seen this man in my entire life. William Fichtner. Okay. Let's try to guess the price of these weird Facebook Marketplace items. A 1-year-old Black Angus mixed cow. That feels pretty premium. I could see a good cow going for a few $1,000s, maybe $3,000. $1,600. Okay. I mean, I don't know farm animal prices, but that feels like a steal. Somebody's natural dreads. I mean, based on the picture, that's a lot of hair to work with. Kind of rare to get your hands on that. I could see this being like $300 or so. 100. Wow. I might unironically buy this. Ultra rare Cheez-It. I mean, that does look pretty crazy. 3 infused in 1. That's no joke. I could see it going for like $100 maybe. Good collector's item. 1 million? All right, this is like a joke listing. A whoopin'? This is like a Hitman, basically. Hopefully not too expensive, though. Pretty weak looking fist, to be honest. I'd say like a bootleg Hitman would be like $1,000. Free? Wow, okay. That's great value. And Gavin? I didn't know you could buy people on Facebook Marketplace. I think they ran the numbers, though, and a human is like a few $1,000,000, maybe like 2.5. No, $32. You're worth more than that, Gavin. These are the hardest scenes ever filmed. So in Spider-Man, the scene where Peter Parker catches Mary Jane and her entire lunch tray in the cafeteria contains 0 CGI and was actually done practically. It took 156 takes for Tobey Maguire to catch all the items in a perfect sequence and took an entire day just to film that 5-second clip. The Halo jump from Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible Fallout took 106 jumps to get the perfect shot, with Tom Cruise doing this for months since there was only a 3-minute window each day to do it. In The Shining, the baseball bat staircase scene was done by Shelley Duvall 127 times. The director wanted her to feel genuine fear, and she actually ended up losing some hair after the 100th attempt because of the stress. The D-Day landing scene in Saving Private Ryan cost $12 million and had 1,500 extras, taking 4 weeks to shoot. Steven Spielberg wanted total realism for it, which made things nearly impossible. The TV show Adolescence was shot in one continuous shot with no hidden cuts, so if an actor messed up 50 minutes in, for instance, the entire episode had to be reshot. And finally, the chariot race from Ben-Hur took 9 months to film, 15,000 extras, and cost $50 million, making it the craziest scene to film in history. That's crazy. These are the hardest scenes to watch, so I don't recommend watching any of these. So the D-Day landing scene in Saving Private Ryan carried a realism to it that had veterans claiming it triggered their PTSD because of how realistic it was, and at least a handful of people went to a frenzy after watching it. There's a tough-to-watch scene in SpongeBob dubbed the toenail scene, in which SpongeBob drops a sofa on Squidward's foot and accidentally rips Squidward's toenail off, that is considered unwatchable by many people. On the emotional side, the police station confession scene in Manchester by the Sea and the ending of Schindler's List ranks highly for difficult scenes to sit through without feeling uncomfortable. The episode Scott's Tots in season 6 of The Office is considered tough to watch for many because of secondhand embarrassment when Michael Scott has to face kids after failing to have the money to pay for their education. Many people actually skip the episode entirely. The scene in 127 Hours where Aaron Ralston has to cut through his arm to free himself from the boulder is often cited as one of the hardest because it's based on a true story. But finally, the movie Irreversible features 2 scenes, one involving a fire extinguisher and another one involving a 9-minute encounter in an alley, that are considered the 2 hardest scenes to watch in movie history. So don't watch any of these. These are historical events that didn't actually happen. So while the Declaration of Independence was approved on July 4th, it wasn't actually officially signed until August 2nd, 1776, with many delegates even signing it months later. Vikings didn't wear horned helmets, and instead that was popularized in the 19th century by costume designers. And Marie Antoinette never said let them eat cake, as that term was coined when she was just 9 years old. Not a single person or witch was burned at the stake in Salem, with most of them being hanged or pressed to death. This is confused with the European witch trials, which were much more brutal. The Library of Alexandria didn't burn in a single fire, but rather a multi-century decline from budget cuts and civil unrest. And gladiators didn't typically fight to the death, as they were incredibly expensive to train in-house, meaning that most ended in a referee decision since death would have been a financial disaster. And finally, pirates didn't actually bury their treasure and only ruled the Caribbean for about 10 years in the 1700s, as this myth was just perpetuated by the book Treasure Island. Pretty cool, right? How long could you hide in a ball pit? So I went to Bubble Planet, which is an interactive museum that's known for its massive ball pit, with the goal of being on the final tour and trying to hide in the ball pit overnight. When I entered the exhibit, though, I found somewhere even better to hide, a balloon pit. And so I waited for everybody else on my tour to leave and snuck back into the balloon pit area, finding a good place to hide with the goal of going unnoticed. After about 5 minutes buried underneath, a security guard walked by, but luckily didn't notice me. But then they walked into the actual balloon pit to do a final check, and I thought for sure this was where they were going to get me, but I somehow didn't get caught. After a while, the lights briefly turned off, and then the music stopped and the museum was officially closed, which meant that I had successfully dodged security there. Realistically though, I wasn't going to sleep there because it dawned upon me how many people had been in that balloon pit. So ultimately I decided to leave, and I was able to walk out completely unnoticed right before the store itself actually closed. So how long could you hide in a ball pit? Theoretically forever, assuming you have a good enough hiding spot. How long can you leave a drink in a display fridge before somebody notices? So to test this, I went into the appliance section at Lowe's and found a random refrigerator that I placed an Olipop in. I also threw a shirt into one of the washer dryers to see if that would stay in there as well. And then I left the store and decided to go back 24 hours later, and I was very confident that both of these items would be gone, but after checking both the fridge and the washer, both of my items were still there. And so I decided to wait another 2 days, making it now 72 hours since I initially put the items in their display cases. And when I arrived, I beelined for the dryer, fully expecting it not to be there, but I was surprised to still see it there 3 full days later. But surely they took the drink out of the fridge, right? Well, I walked over there to see if my Olipop was in there, and lo and behold, inside was my soda, completely deformed because I actually left it in the freezer but completely untouched and left in the exact place where I left it 72 hours prior. I'll check back in another week, but so far it's been 3 days and not a single person has noticed either item in the display cases. I wonder how often they check that. How long could you secretly work at Target? So to test this, I purchased a red polo and khakis and walked into my local Target with the plan of completing employee tasks and most importantly, not getting caught. I headed to the crowded areas to start, looking to do some general cleanup, but this Target was an absolute mess, so for about 20 minutes I was putting items from other aisles back in their original spots, reorganizing product shelves in accordance with their tags, and just cleaning up trash that was scattered throughout the store. Nobody seemed to care or notice, and I even went up to a couple of coworkers nonchalantly, but they didn't seem to bat an eye. I continued working for the next 20 minutes and moved to the clothing area where I was folding clothes and price checking items for people, and I could see how busy things really were for the employees, so I actually tried my best to do as much as I can given my limited access. And this continued for a bit until I ultimately decided to end my shift after about an hour, and this is when I ran into this overflowed garbage, but then I realized that I don't actually work there and don't have to take it out, so I left ultimately undetected, but hopefully adding some positive value to my local Target. Very cool. How long could you secretly work at Best Buy? So to test this, I purchased a blue polo and khakis and walked into my local Best Buy with the plan of 1, helping customers, 2, completing employee tasks, and 3, most importantly, not getting caught. I posted up in the fitness and electronics section to start because they didn't seem to be manned, and I began my shift by fixing some of the out of position boxes and doing some general cleanup, ensuring that I completed a few tasks early to blend in. After about 30 minutes in, I actually got my first customer, being somebody looking to purchase headphones, so I ended up helping them and directing them to the checkout area, marking my first sale. Following that, I continued greeting people, asking if they needed help, and I think I had some other sales 10 minutes later, convincing one guy to buy a TV and another group of girls to purchase some computer accessories. However, I was unable to see these to fruition because just as I was gaining momentum, the security guard came up to me, catching on to what I was doing, and politely asked me to stop, which of course I was sure to abide by. So the answer is about 45 minutes, and Best Buy, you're welcome for the sales. How long could you secretly work at Walmart? So to test this, I purchased a blue polo and khakis and walked into my local Walmart with the plan of 1, completing employee tasks, 2, helping customers, and 3, most importantly, not getting caught. When I walked in, I found some quick employee tasks to do, like organizing items that were out of place and even sweeping up certain areas with a broom that I found hanging off to the side. From here, I decided to help customers, and I realized there wasn't a greeter at this Walmart, which I thought that everyone had. So I decided to step in and say hi to the Walmart patrons, which boosted store morale, and then the ultimate help was giving discounts to all the customers by changing the price of items to be cheaper. I'm just kidding, that's probably illegal. But then it was time for my final task, not to get caught. And for this, I wanted to see if I was able to sneak into one of the employee back rooms to chat with my colleagues, and to my surprise, I was not only allowed in, but I interacted with about 4 or 5 different employees without them noticing anything. I'd say I deserve Employee of the Month. How long could you stay at a Dunkin' after it closes? So to do this, I went to my local Dunkin' 10 minutes before closing to pick up an iced tea, and after the worker finished cleaning out the bathroom, I decided to sneak in the bathroom to hide, knowing that they wouldn't check it again, to see if I could stay in there till they closed up the store, not realizing that I was in there. And so once I was in, I waited in there for about 10 minutes until the store was officially closed, and then proceeded to listen through the walls to listen for when the employees were gone. After about 10 more minutes, I couldn't hear anything, so I proceeded to leave, and after opening the bathroom door, I realized the lights were off, and I thought for sure I was locked in and everybody left, since I was in there well past closing at this point. And so I got to the door and I realized it was actually locked, and I thought an alarm was going to go off, but luckily an employee came out right then and told me nonchalantly that I can just twist the lock to leave, and so I left. I guess he's seen much crazier things, but Definitely don't do this. How long could you stay at a movie theater after it closes? So to test this, I purchased a ticket to the last showing at my local AMC, which was set to end around 1:30 a.m. When I got inside the theater, there were a few people who were also watching the last showing. So we all sat there watching Project Hail Mary. Good movie, by the way. And when it finished, I waited for everybody to leave the theater, remaining in my seat, curious to see how long I could milk sitting there. Well, 5 minutes turned into 30 minutes and nobody was coming by to clean the theater, so I was convinced that all the workers left and they would clean up in the morning, which meant that I was potentially trapped in the theater with no signs of anybody, not even in the projector room. And so I decided to explore around the theater a little bit to confirm this position, just in case I had missed anybody, but I couldn't find a single worker despite looking everywhere. I decided to check the doors to see if I was locked in, and that's when a worker secretly emerged out of nowhere, asking me how I liked the movie, and he told me that he was cleaning up the theaters and that it takes about 45 minutes to an hour to wrap things up after closing, so I guess that's your answer. Shout out to AMC. How long could you stay at a racetrack after it closes? So I went to watch the last race at the Meadowlands, one of America's largest horse racing venues, and wanted to see if I was able to stake out in the bleachers long after they close up. I was able to blend in and avoid being noticed for about 10 minutes sitting there despite security walking around and surveying the area, and eventually they left, which meant that I was free to roam around without the fear of being caught. And so I explored the rest of the stadium, including some private pavilions, and eventually went inside where everything was shut down, including the escalators. I decided to head to the roof area, which is only for VIPs, to see what was up there, and it was here where I found the luxury suites, premier seating, and the main security office. After about 25 minutes of exploring this racetrack, I got into the elevator, but I accidentally clicked the ground floor, which meant that I was sure to bump into somebody, and sure enough, an employee walked in and questioned why I was still there, and so I decided to head out the front at that point, saying goodbye to security and leaving the racetrack, which means that the answer is about 30 minutes. So now you know. How long could you stay at places after they close? So for every minute past closing, I decided to give the employees $10, starting off with Dave & Buster's, and I stuck around until the machines turned off and tried staking out in an arcade game in one of their banquet rooms. Eventually though, after 11 minutes, the security guard found us and told us it was time to go. I went to Dick's next, and here I walked around the store till it closed and tried to stake out near the kayak section, but they were extremely thorough with telling customers about closing, so I was only able to stay 2 minutes past 9 o'clock here. I tried a gas station next, which closed at 1 a.m., and this one was surprising because they actually closed 2 minutes before their stated time, so I had to talk my way in by stating that I was just buying a candy bar, but I was still promptly kicked out exactly at 1. Afterwards, I went to a Burger King drive-thru at 12:35, despite them closing at 12:30, and here they were surprisingly still happy to take orders even though it was 5 minutes past operating hours. And then finally was Cheesecake Factory, and here I was surprised because they were incredibly relaxed with pushing people out, even though I was there for 25 minutes past closing and was the last person at my table. Shout out to Cheesecake Factory. How long would it take for an employee to notice if I messed with one of the mannequins? So to test this, I pulled up to my local Walmart and found a mannequin hidden in plain sight with the goal of putting on a goofy outfit on it to see if employees actually pay attention to their display items. I found a colorful pair of sunglasses and a Hello Kitty hat in the kids section and put it atop this lone mannequin in the men's section I found. From here, I waited a few minutes and nobody seemed to notice it, with employees and customers alike walking by but not even looking twice at it. And so to make it even more obvious, I brought an employee over and asked where I could find the outfit that the mannequin was wearing, and rather than thinking something was off, she actually just instructed me on where to find the pieces. And this went on for another 30 minutes, and so at the 45-minute mark, I decided to leave and come back a couple hours later, and upon returning, I was shocked to actually see that the employees did notice and they took the hat and glasses off, returning the mannequin back to normal. So the answer is somewhere between 45 minutes and 2 hours, but definitely longer than expected. How long would it take you to correctly guess a number between 1 and 100? So statistically, it should take 100 tries, but my ego says otherwise, and so I used this random number generator and wrote down my prediction prior to each guess in an effort to beat the odds. Now my first few guesses were horrible, as I was over 20 numbers away from guessing the right one, but my 8th guess was only 2 numbers away, so I thought that I was heading somewhere. Unfortunately though, it is true that each guess is technically independent of the other, and so any hot streak I had was completely killed by an off-based guess. After about 30 attempts, I decided to change strategies, instead just choosing the number 1 and waiting for that to hit, and I did this for about 20 guesses, but it didn't hit. And so instead, I decided to change my number to 93 because 93 appeared 4 previous times, which I thought was strange. So maybe I figured there was something to it. And what do you know? Lo and behold, after my 72nd guess, the number 93 showed up, meaning that in fact, I was able to beat the odds by 28%. I guess it's time to buy a lottery ticket. How many people actually put their shopping carts back? Well, to test this, I started at Whole Foods, where the clientele is known to be a bit more premium. But would it translate to their morals? Well, I'm happy to report it did, because after tracking about 20 different people at Whole Foods of varying demographics, only 2 people defected. Most people would, without second guessing, unload the groceries into their car and then immediately push it back in the cart area. Also, one of the defectors was an old man, so not as egregious. After this, I went to Walmart though to compare against different customers, and I was immediately surprised with the distance some Walmart customers would go to put their carts away, signaling to me that this may even beat Whole Foods. But unfortunately, they weren't all good eggs, because a good amount of people defected and broke the shopping cart social contract by pushing them off to the side or just in front of their cars when leaving. And so overall, with a sample size of 40, it looks like 80% of shoppers typically put their shopping cart back, and the Whole Foods clientele seems to be a bit more trusting than Walmart's. So now you know. How many people can you fit in a smart car? So the record is 20 people, but those were female cheerleaders, and so I wanted to see realistically how many average-sized men could get inside of a smart car. Now there's actually ample room in the front seat to fit a few people, but the trunk is where it gets limiting, with absolutely no way we could get more than one, maybe two guys there. But nonetheless, we began stacking one after another, using laps in the front seat, and then trying to muster as many people as we could into the trunk. Eventually though, we were able to all get in, and I was able to drive off despite it being incredibly jammed. After a quick lap, we arrived back to our destination, and here's the final count. So I think the limit is realistically anywhere between 5 and 7 people, depending on how big they are. So now you know. How many should you take? I mean, depends where you're at, but I'd say a rule of thumb is like 2 sauces per item, maybe 3, because like the last thing you want is to run out of sauce and you have to eat dry food. Free samples are probably weird after your second one. Even going for a second is pushing it, but I think 3 is the official stop. Ice cream samples is the same thing. I think you can try like 2 flavors max, then after that you should get cut off. Unlimited breadsticks, like refills, probably like 4 baskets is max. If you're refilling more than that, that's just like an ungodly amount of bread anyways. Free refills, I think you can go pretty high. Maybe like 5 or 6 is the max, because if you get a refill or 2 per course, that seems pretty standard. If you're touching double digits though, that becomes a bit too much. Water cups, I don't think you can ask for more than 1 per person in your group. So if I'm going solo, I would never ask for more than 1. Mints, I don't really take mints, but you can probably take like a small handful and it's normal. Toothpicks though would be 1. And then napkins, probably 1 healthy stack is good. Once you get into like 2 stacks, I think they know that you're going for the car inventory. How many times can I 6-7? Let's go standing. Okay, not bad. How much air does it take to explode an air mattress? So I bought an air mattress to answer this question and purchased a manual pump that could be used to push it beyond its limit. I started off with the automatic pump just to get it to its normal base state, and then I switched things over to the manual pump because I wanted to continue onwards past the normal point of what you'd sleep on. And I kept going and going until my arm was getting physically tired, so I had my friend step in to continue pumping, and every second was suspenseful. And then finally, after 10 minutes of manually pumping, this is what ultimately happened. It was very loud. I don't recommend doing this. How much does it cost to get a shout out from these celebrities? And this is a 60-second personalized video. Brian Bumgarner from The Office? I don't know. I feel like he'd give me a cameo for like $500 or so. He's got a cult following, so he'd probably charge that. Oh wow, $195. I feel like he can charge more. Kevin O'Leary? Why is he doing shout outs? Isn't he already ultra rich? Like, what's the purpose of this? Maybe like 1,000 or something? 1,500? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. AJ and Big Justice? What would I pay? Probably like $50 or something for a personalized message, right? $150? Okay, bit steep. Why is the founder of Apple on Cameo? I'm pretty sure he's a multi-billionaire. That's crazy. He's got to charge at least like 10,000, right? 1,600? Okay, still crazy. And Practical Jokers, that is some pull. He's probably more relevant than Kevin from The Office. Maybe like 400 or so. Double of Brian. 249, not bad. And then Chris Hansen. I don't know if he's that popular nowadays, but I can see him charging a couple hundred. $99, wow. It's a steal. How much does it cost to hire these celebrities? This is like for a birthday or something. Justin Bieber's probably like $10 million at this point to sing. I'm surprised there's even a number for him. $6 million? Okay, I mean, that's crazy. The Rock, what is he gonna do, sing? I guess the appearance fee, maybe like $1 million. All right, basically, that's crazy. Bruno Mars is probably similar to Justin, maybe a bit less, $5 million. I'm sure a lot of weddings use him. $3 million, okay. Pitbull is worth any amount of money, brings the hype. Maybe like $1 million for him too, he's got some bangers. No, 500K, okay. Taylor Swift is probably charging Justin Bieber numbers, or more, maybe like 7 million. 7.4 million, wow, jeez. And then Kylie Jenner, what are people hiring her for, just to be there? I don't know, maybe like 750K like The Rock? No, $1 million, all right. That's crazy. How much money do you really save by negotiating? So I ran this experiment on 3 different items, with the first being a monitor that was listed for $400. I went in strong at $300, hoping to meet in the middle, but the guy wouldn't budge and only dropped $10. From here, I found an exoskeleton for $900, but I was struggling with how to properly start this negotiation, and so I booted up Grammarly, my AI writing partner, since it helps professionals like me with all their writing needs from draft to done. I leveraged its AI chat to help come up with a strong opener for my message, since I want the seller to come down to around 600, and it worked because I got down to 750 right off the bat. And the guy seemed chill, so I decided to use the humanizer feature to level with him a bit more, and I chose the everyday voice tone, which helped me craft a warmer response. He ended up lowering the price to $700. And then I ended things with a $50 water bottle, and this person seemed a bit more eccentric, and so I leveraged the paraphraser to provide a more creative reach out, which helped the message fit the tone of the conversation. I even got a response within minutes that said okay, saving me $20, meaning that I saved a total of $230 from negotiating. So thanks to Grammarly for not only saving me time, but also some money. And to level up your productivity, download Grammarly today, use the link or scan this QR code right here to get 20% off Pro. How much money does it take to empty a claw machine? So I pulled up to the game room arcade, loaded up my game card with hundreds of dollars, and found this Peppa Pig plush toy claw machine that I was determined to empty to see how long it would take. Now every attempt cost roughly $1, and according to online, about 10% of attempts is a winner, meaning that one plushie would take roughly $10 to win, which meant that this could get expensive very quickly. Luckily though, I started off strong and I was able to win 10 plushies on just $30 total, even winning multiple plushies on a single drop. Eventually though, I started losing over and over and over again, and so I called in a claw machine expert to help speed the process up. And when he arrived, he was able to help a lot more, but every so often I did have to ask an employee to reposition some of the toys because they were getting stuck. But after about 2 hours and 30 minutes, we finally emptied everything out after spending a grand total of $195 on 61 plushies. So about $200 to empty a claw machine. How much money does it take to empty a vending machine? So I've always been curious, 1, how many drinks in a vending machine there are, and 2, how much money vending machine operators make. And so to test this, I went to a vending machine with hundreds of dollars to see how much it would take to empty it out. And so I began, going one by one, starting with the Pepsi and working my way through the other drinks, with each drink coming in between $3 and $6. Eventually, after 20 minutes, I got tired though, and so I called in a vending machine expert to finish the task, and he did this, no joke, for 2 hours straight, one drink at a time, until we bought 150 sodas, which cost over $600, which sold out a majority of the sodas. But the worst part is we weren't even able to buy every drink because we ran out of money, so unfortunately we'll have to finish up some other day. But I'm pretty sure there's $1,000 worth of about 200 different sodas in a single vending machine. Good business. How much does it cost to buy the entire menu? I mean, Cheesecake Factory has 250 items. Let me do some quick math here. So times 20, 5,000 plus drinks, maybe 6,000, 7,000, 10,000. Wow, that's expensive. It makes sense if you include the alcohol, I guess. Taco Bell actually did this once. It wasn't the entire menu, but I think I spent like 130. So if I got everything, like all variations, maybe like 250. Yep, spot on. Starbucks, are we counting like all the modifications? Because they only have like 60 total items. With the modifications, it could be infinite. I don't know, maybe like 500 bucks? 1,000, okay. So I guess counting everything. In-N-Out. I haven't gone in a while, but they have like 3 items. This is probably super cheap, maybe like 75 bucks. 40, is that right? That's insanely low. McDonald's should be like Taco Bell. I can see like 300 for them. No, 400. All right, well, pretty close, all things considered. And then Dunkin'. I mean, I'm guessing their market research team basically mirrored Starbucks. So probably around 1,000 as well, right? 950. All right, not bad. These are humans who became animals. So a British man named Thomas Thwaites created a realistic goat suit, including a prosthetic stomach to help him digest the grass, then lived amongst a herd of goats for 3 days. He was actually accepted by the goats and even got into a fight with another goat over dominance. A man named Dennis Avner spent 30 years and $200,000 to look like a tiger. He changed the shape of his face, ears, teeth, and even inserted on a mechanical tail. In the 1920s, a Soviet scientist inseminated a female chimpanzee with human DNA in an attempt to make a chimpanzee-human hybrid, but luckily failed. Similarly, Oliver the chimpanzee in the 1970s was thought to be human-fused because of his flat face and completely upright walking position, but thankfully he just had a unique genetic mutation. In 2011, a scientist used bioengineered human skin cells to grow a layer of skin around spider silk and created bulletproof skin, meaning that we can realistically fuse and become impenetrable Spider-Mans if we want. And finally, a few years ago, scientists injected human stem cells into pig embryos to prove that pig organs can be used for life-saving transplants, and also to prove that you could theoretically create a pig man. That's crazy. These are humans humans who have defied science. So in 1945, a woman named Beulah Hunter had a 13-month pregnancy, which was 100 days longer than humanly possible, giving birth to a perfectly healthy baby. A man named Thierry from France had an endless appetite that let him eat meals for 15 people without gaining weight, and he was even suspected of eating live cats, puppies, and even a 14-month-old toddler from the hospital. Even more interesting was a woman named Brooke Greenberg who remained the size and mental age of a 6-month-old infant due to her syndrome X, despite her being 20 years old. A family in Kentucky during the 1900s had bright blue skin resulting from a rare genetic condition which turned their blood chocolate brown and their skin blue. They were later cured by injecting themselves with artificially blue dye, ironically. A Chinese man named Li Ching Yuan was thought to have lived to 256 years old, making him twice the age of the oldest known person, and this was verified by Chengdu University and the Chinese government. And finally, a boy named Harry Eastlack had a rare disease in which every time he suffered a minor bruise or muscle tear, his body grew back solid bone instead of muscle, leading him to effectively turn into bone before dying relatively young. That's crazy. These are humans who are technically perfect. So in 2014, a computational biologist used genome data to figure out which group of people has the most optimal DNA sequencing in the world, and the answer was Puerto Rican women, as they have strong ethnic mixing and buffer against recessive diseases. Additionally, a study was conducted on 500,000 people to find genetic superheroes, and 13 people were found to be resistant to effectively all modern-day diseases, meaning that they'd probabilistically only die from poor lifestyle. In terms of perfect vision, a woman named Veronica Sider has 22 vision, which is 20 times better than the average human, letting her see details from over a mile away. And for perfect metabolism, a man named Liam Hoekstra requires no additional exercise to maintain his physique, as his body naturally builds muscle so long as he's eating. The Chamani tribe of the Amazon have the lowest level of heart disease ever recorded by science, meaning they have perfect cardiovascular health and are resistant to heart disease and strokes thanks to an APO gene variant. And finally, less than 50 people in the world have golden blood, which is a universal donor and can be used to save quite literally anybody. Pretty cool, right? I answered every spam email I got for a day. So I receive about 100 spam emails per day, and so I figured I'd take a look at what they're sending me in case I was missing something valuable. Now, a good amount of these spam emails were just people asking me for advice on their YouTube channels, and I guess they have suspicious sending behavior because Gmail flagged them as spam. My advice though, stay consistent. There are also a lot of random Google Drives sent to me in my spam folder, but unfortunately I can't open those. And there was also a lot of receipts of purchases that people had made and then tagged my email to it. I had a couple of offers from dodgy brands looking to do brand deals, but they were from weird domains, so unfortunately I don't trust you. And then other promotional emails to sign up for newsletters and stuff, but I'm also not interested. But I have to say that the largest bulk of my spam emails, like 99% of them, were all these private chat and hookup sites that message me. And I'm not sure why I'm on these mailing lists and why there's literally hundreds of them, but I promise I did not sign up for them. So I learned a valuable lesson: do not open your spam folder. I asked AI to predict everything, and here's what it said. So the next president of the United States is likely going to be JD Vance over Gavin Newsom, and the winner of the World Cup is going to be Spain over France. The first trillionaire is going to be Elon Musk on December 26th of this year once SpaceX does its IPO, and the first company to be worth $10 trillion will be Nvidia in 2029 once it begins creating robots for the government, expanding their contract sizes. AI predicts GTA 6 will be delayed again and officially released on March 16th, 2027, and phones are expected to become obsolete by 2030 in favor of wearables like glasses. The first human to live to 150 is actually alive today and is likely 30 years old, meaning that by 2146 they'll hit that mark thanks to our progress in epigenetics, though apparently by 2070 we'll reach biological immortality, making living forever a choice. World War III is expected to start on November 21st, 2030, with the starter event being something around the Taiwan conflict. And apparently through a SpaceX colony program, the first human is expected to be born on Mars by 2054. And lastly, the next major social media platform to die will be Instagram by 2028, ironically because of AI content flooding the platform. I asked AI to enhance a single pixel to see if it could recreate the original image. So I gave AI just a single pixel from this image in hopes that it could backsolve its way to recreating the original image, but after the first attempt, it clearly was completely lost. And so instead, I figured I'd test how many pixels it takes for AI to recreate the original image. So I bumped it up to 20 pixels and it created this, 50 pixels where it was getting somewhat close but still fell a bit short, and then 100 pixels where it was actually finally able to decipher the center of the photo, capturing it nearly perfectly. I figured we were almost there, so I bumped it up to 200 pixels thinking this would be it, but unfortunately they made me a bit too handsome. So then I bumped it up to 300 pixels and we got this, which is still not me, and then 400 pixels, which was nearly there, but it still wasn't my face. After feeding it 500 pixels from the original, I got this, which is interesting, but not quite there. And then after asking it to guess the image after 600 pixels, we finally got this image, which is close enough. I purchased a $1,000 AI suitcase. So I found this auto follow smart suitcase for $1,000 and decided to purchase it to see whether or not 1, it actually worked, and 2, if it was worth it. When it arrived, it looked like a standard suitcase but had a battery pack inside and a sensor remote that allowed it to apparently do some crazy things like dance on its own and of course auto follow you around the airport. Before testing that though, I wanted to test its rideability, and as it claims, you can sit on it and drive it if you ever get tired, and I have to say that functionality works surprisingly well, and I was able to drive gate to gate despite it looking a little bit goofy. From here I wanted to test its dance feature it touted, and so I put it on its corner to see if it would do it, and lo and behold, it actually was able to dance and defied all laws of physics in the process, and this one was definitely a fan favorite. But now it's time for the final test to see if it could auto follow. Now the claim was that the sensors will pick up where you are and just trail you as you're walking, and of course I was skeptical that this would work, but after trying it, I have to say it actually worked great and was following me all throughout the airport, keeping up with different speeds, turns, and anything else that I threw its way. I mean, definitely not worth the $1,000, but pretty cool. I bought a $3,000 AI stroller to see if it actually worked. So I found this stroller online that uses sensors and AI to offer a hands-free stroller experience for parents, and so of course I had to get it so I could run it through some tests using my fake baby. First off was the Rock My Baby mode, in which it rocks your baby back and forth, and this worked well, offering 3 different speeds. You're also able to use the built-in speaker, so I was blasting Baby Shark while my fake kid was rocking. The next test was for their push assist feature, which basically pushes the stroller for you, and this was actually cool, pushing the weight of the stroller without me applying any force whatsoever. From here I tried the hands-free mode, in which the stroller would move without me, and so long as I was staying close to it, my baby was in fact being pushed by AI, and would even stop and activate the brakes when it detected me far away. And then for my final test, I wanted to see if this could detect barriers, and so I abandoned my stroller right before a concrete slab to see if it would brake right before, but it didn't. And then I ultimately did it near a ledge to see what would happen there, and unfortunately, my baby went flying. Otherwise though, really cool product. I bought a $6,000 gorilla couch. So I previously purchased this $1,500 inflatable gorilla, but as you can see, he's pretty low quality. And so instead, I found an actual version online because I thought it was time to replace him. And if you think you're going crazy, you're not. That dog couch is actually moving. I created that using Adobe Firefly, which is Adobe's AI-powered creative studio. I specifically used this prompt using the generate video feature, and what's cool is that Firefly is the only place where you can generate and actually finish the video. So afterwards, you can use the video editor so you could finish off production, since it's an all-in-one workflow. AI video is moving beyond clips and into real generation, so get started using Adobe Firefly today, right? I bought somebody's random USB stick to see what was on it. So I found this USB stick on eBay for $75, and I thought that was a strange thing to sell, and so I wanted to see what it could possibly be hiding. It was being shipped from Israel, so it took a month to get here, but when it finally arrived, I opened it up and it looked pretty normal, but what about when I plugged it in? Well, that's where things got strange, because it literally had the faces of tens of thousands of people, apparently AI generated, all in different folders. It broke it down by demographics, including age and gender, and it's literally just endless photos of people who honestly look pretty real. There's also a couple of other files on there that I'm not able to access, but one thing's for certain, I definitely shouldn't have plugged this into my computer because it definitely released malware and it's probably broken my PC. I have no idea why somebody would be in possession of this. I bought AI generated ads to see what they actually look like. Starting with this cool AI cat bed I found, I thought that it would rival my gorilla couch and dog couch based on the pictures, but after purchasing it, I can confirm this was an absolute scam because it was literally just a glorified sleeping bag. Afterwards, I found this really cool drink jacket I found on AliExpress. I was positive this was a scam, but it looked promising when it arrived, and after filling it up with iced tea, it not only looked exactly like the picture, but I was able to sip my drink out of the attached straw. Also on AliExpress was an AI-generated go-kart ad that looked way too good for the price they were asking for, but I went ahead and purchased it. When it arrived, I assembled it, and I was surprised to get an actual working go-kart that I'm able to drive around my room. This AI-generated LED cloud off of TikTok Shop was next, and I was rightfully skeptical in it looking anything like the picture, and when it arrived, it looked like this, and I was chalking it up to be a letdown, but I was able to make it look kind of cool. And then finally, I found this really cool polar bear lounger on this LV furniture website that I was almost positive wasn't going to look anything like the picture, but to my surprise, this one looked exactly like the ad and is now maybe one of my favorite products I've ever purchased. Pretty cool. I bought every sample at Costco. So my goal was simple, ruin samples for everybody else by buying up all the inventory so they have to shut down their sampling. And so I went inside searching for the perfect sample stand with the most activity, and I came across this Boom Chicka Pop ice cream sample station that had dozens of people walking by every minute. I gave the ice cream a try and I actually really liked it, so much so that I told the lady that I wanted every single one of them. Now she was definitely confused at first, but equally happy because she said that she works on commission, and I started loading up my cart box by box, taking literally all of the inventory of this product that was in the freezer. The employees and managers were amused and obviously happy, but I don't think the customers were too happy because, as expected, they shut down the sample station shortly afterwards. I proceeded to check out to see what the damage would be for running this experiment, and it ended up being around $300 for every single box, which, all things considered, isn't too bad. I'm sorry if you were in Costco that day. I bought the world's itchiest shirt. So sackcloth is considered the itchiest material in the world as it's made of coarse goat hair and was historically worn as a punishment thousands of years ago. And so I found a sackcloth shirt on Etsy and decided to purchase it to see if it was as bad as it sounds. When it arrived, it came in this sackcloth bag, and immediately from unboxing it, I could see the stiff goat hairs poking up through the shirt. I mean, it's literally the same material you'd see in a potato sack race. And so I changed out of my cotton clothing and put it on, and I immediately felt the itchiness as this was like wearing cashmere on steroids. It did retain a nice stiff shape though because of the material, so I actually liked it the way it looked, especially with the cool buckle it had, but there was no question this would be tough to wear for a full 24 hours, especially if you have some body hair, as it's known to irritate those areas and cause redness and swelling. But I'm not gonna lie though, I expected it to be worse, and based on how it looks, I think this sackcloth is a good example of sacrificing comfort for quality, so I will be wearing it again. I tested the world's strangest liquid. It's called ferrofluid, and it's technically not a real liquid, but rather a combination form of matter that responds to magnetism and even sound in order to move. So I purchased some on Amazon, and when it arrived, it came in this case, which when activated allows you to test it out with a magnet to show how it moves in response to the pull. And while this was cool, I wanted to test its ability to move with sound, and so I began tapping on the glass, which, as expected, caused the liquid to respond to my touch, and not gonna lie, I was starting to feel like venom. But apparently it's not just the physical taps it responds to, but also any sort of ambient sound in the area, like snaps or claps or really anything that emits a sound frequency. And so as a final test, I wanted to take my Aztec death whistle and see how it responds to 100 decibels of sound. And so I did exactly that, blowing as hard as I can, and while it didn't respond that crazily, it is cool to know that this physics-defying anti-liquid actually exists. Very cool. I called a tow truck for my toy car. So recently I purchased a Hot Wheels car and I was playing with it outside when all of a sudden I accidentally broke one of the wheels. And so, as any sane person would do, I called up my local towing company and asked them to pick me up because my car broke down. And lo and behold, 30 minutes later they arrived and they asked me where my car was, to which I showed them the car I needed help towing. Luckily though, my tow truck driver Dennis was happy to play along and help me out, and so he backed up his truck, lowered down the bed, and began the towing process. Now logistically we ran into some problems as it wouldn't go on normally, but Dennis had a good idea to place my car in this sled device that he had lying around and used a zip tie device to secure it in place. From here it was stabilized, and then he was able to pull it up with the rope hook onto the bed of the truck. And so at this point my car was officially loaded up and secured on the tow truck and ready to be brought to the shop. So Dennis got into the car and drove away, completing the task and officially setting a record for the smallest car ever towed. So shout out to Dennis. I called meme phone numbers to see if anybody would pick up. Starting with 6767676767, I didn't expect anybody to answer given how absurd the number was, and immediately upon calling it, I was told that the number wasn't in service. I called 800-800-8008, which spells out boob boob boob, an old calculator meme number, and this number surprisingly worked, connecting me with Zebra Technologies, which is some AI data company. Afterwards, I tried the famous 123-456-7890, expecting to reach some automated line because apparently it's the most dialed number ever, but unfortunately it wasn't even connected. 800-420-6969 was my next call, and this one was actually active, connecting me with a bot that was offering free vouchers and gift cards for major retailers. Pretty sure that one was a scam. Unlike this number, which I don't think I should show you because it actually connects you with a real old lady who somehow stumbled on this number. And finally, I ended things with 666-666-6666, a number I'm told that you should never call, and after dialing it and letting it ring, it just kept ringing for minutes after minutes, so it was either disconnected or there's something deeper going on there. Very cool though. I called stores at 3 a.m. to see if anybody would answer. Starting with 7-Eleven, I was surprised to actually get a pickup, and so I asked which Slurpee flavors they currently have, to which they told me the usual. Very helpful. I called a McDonald's afterwards to see if the ice cream machine was working, totally not expecting to be connected to the local restaurant, but luckily for me, the store manager actually answered and told me it was functioning, which is a rare occurrence. I called a random 24/7 gas station next to see if they would answer at this time, but I kept getting redirected to corporate, so I think they shut their phones off post midnight. I tried Planet Fitness, which is 24/7 at around 3 a.m., and I was able to connect with the night shift manager, and so I asked about the current crowd, and she said there were a few people lifting, which saved me the hassle of seeing it for myself. I called Times Square afterwards, gauging its crowd level at 3 a.m., and the tourist hotline was busy, so I guess they were either helping a customer out or helping a YouTuber make a similar video. And so after this, I called a Waffle House, which I knew was open, but they had an AI answer and they wouldn't connect me to the store, so I hung up. And then I called CVS, hoping to find out whether an item I wanted was in stock, but they ended up hanging up as soon as I asked the question, so now you know. I clicked on 100 YouTube Shorts ads to see what they want you to buy. So I opened up a new YouTube channel and started scrolling, and within 90 seconds I got my first ad for a personalized workout company called Mad Muscles. A few scrolls after that, and I got a fat supplement ad, and I scrolled further and was continuously resetting my algorithm to avoid targeted content, but the health ads continued as I was then served women-specific product ads and home workout devices like Spedients. Eventually though, I stumbled on some more blue chip company ads like eBay and Dell, but the health ads were already stacking up significantly, so much so that 24 of the 50 50 ads that I had watched at that point were completely health related. There were a lot of hyper niche ads popping up, like one I came across for solar panels and one for this building in Korea webinar, which I might attend. And that was honestly a shock because there's so many big brands on YouTube, so why aren't they spending their money there? More of this continued though, and I was starting to get a lot of political ads at this point, which took up a good amount of the back half of this challenge. But after finishing and coming across 100 different ads, this was the breakdown. 47 health ads, 16 political ads, 10 technology ads, 9 impossible to categorize ads, and then the rest just miscellaneous. So now you know. I created a mascot for Amazon. So Amazon is one of the world's largest companies, but notably does not have a mascot, and so I figured I'd change that by creating a mascot inspired by their Prime boxes named Boxy. I hired a costume designer to bring this to life, and when it arrived, it looked exactly like the render, and I was excited to bring it to the Amazon warehouse to see what people thought. When I got there, I went inside to greet a few warehouse workers, and they seemed to enjoy the look of Boxy, as did some of the customers going in for package pickup and drop-off. Afterwards, I did some roadside cheering to show off Boxy, and we had tons of people honking, excited to see the new Amazon mascot. From here, I went to the delivery drivers and took some pictures and waved to the flex drivers who were loading up their cars before ultimately wrapping it up and retiring Boxy for the day, mainly because it was impossible to both see and breathe out of it. But I think Amazon could use Boxy. I created a mascot for Best Buy. So Best Buy doesn't have a mascot, but they do have their iconic yellow price tag logo, and so I decided to create it into a mascot called Bestie with the goal of promoting the store. I got a costume designer to actually make it for me, and when it arrived, it was exactly like I had mocked up, complete with a really friendly smile, so I was excited to see the response. My goal was to give people the Best Buy by handing out $20 bills outside of the store to promote purchasing, and there was actually a good amount of enthusiasm from the customers coming in, and I even set up a couple of secret money hiding spots for future customers to benefit from. Afterwards, I tried to bring it inside, but unfortunately Best Buy employees didn't want any part in this. But not gonna lie, even Bestie couldn't contribute to the lack of customers going in, so I continued being Bestie just outside of the store, saying hi to more customers until ultimately it started raining, which ultimately then concluded my run as Bestie the Best Buy mascot. I don't know why they don't want him. I think he's cute. I created a mascot for Chipotle. So Chipotle is one of America's most popular fast casual chains, but outside of their pepper logo, they don't have an accompanying mascot. And so I decided to create one that captures perhaps the most iconic part of Chipotle, their bag. I completed the design with tinfoil as the arms and legs and hired a costume designer to bring this to life, and when it arrived, it was exactly as drawn up. I aptly named our mascot Baggy and headed to my local Chipotle to see the response, starting with the drive-thru. And the employee actually seemed interested in Chipotle's new potential mascot, and so I decided to bring Baggy inside to give everybody a closer look and order my food there. I stood in line to simulate the Chipotle experience and was able to seamlessly place my order before I sat down to eat my food, which was harder than expected because I had my suit on. And after finishing my food, I got the iconic to-go bag so it would match my costume, took a few more pictures with people as Baggy, and ultimately said goodbye to everybody, officially closing out Baggy's debut as the Chipotle mascot. I think it works. They should definitely use this. I created a mascot for IKEA. So IKEA doesn't have a mascot despite its global presence, and so I decided to make one inspired by their most iconic item sold there, their Swedish meatballs. I mocked up Meat Boy, and then I hired a costume designer to bring him to life, and when he arrived, he looked exactly like the picture and was actually super cute. I brought him to my local IKEA, hoping to walk around and purchase some meatballs, but I immediately got flagged by management, who was confused as to what was happening. A lot of the employees loved it though and rallied for me, and eventually they accepted a brief walk around the store so I could try to spread IKEA cheer. So after waiting about 10 minutes in the room, I got an official IKEA escort all throughout the maze, and the customers seemed to have really enjoyed it, and I was promoting some of their deals and even taking pictures with everybody who came up. Eventually we reached the promised land in the cafeteria, and I was able to order meatballs dressed as Meat Boy and finished up the maze. There wasn't much to do, to be honest, but I do think Meat Boy touched the souls of dozens of people that day. So I'm glad he exists. I created a mascot for Starbucks. So Starbucks has their iconic mermaid logo, but notably no accompanying mascot, and so I designed a mascot for them that captures their classic mermaid while making it cute and geared towards kids. I hired a costume designer to bring this to life, and when it arrived, it looked exactly like the mock-up. I decided to name her Venti, named after their large drink, and I brought Venti afterwards to my local Starbucks to see the response. When I pulled up, hundreds of people were taking pictures with Venti, and she was a huge hit with families, and I was even able to go behind the counter with some of the employees to hand a drink to somebody. I was there for a full hour and definitely responsible for a few people going into Starbucks, so it was a great success. However, I wanted to push things even further, and so I brought Venti to her competitor, Dunkin', to see the response, and after talking to the owner, he liked Venti so much that we decided to squash the Starbucks and Dunkin' beef, and he even let me serve donuts to the Dunkin' patrons through the drive-thru window. You're welcome, Starbucks. I disguised myself as a mannequin to see if anybody would notice. So I recently purchased a mannequin from JD Sports, but I felt bad that I took it from them, and so I wanted to go back and fill the void I left by dressing up as a mannequin and modeling their clothes. I put on a gray skin suit and slipped into the same exact outfit the mannequin previously had on, and adopted the same position it previously had, waiting to see if anybody would notice. I was staying as still as possible, and to my surprise, not a single person seemed to realize I was there after about 15 minutes of just standing there. And so I decided to go to the window display and slap myself in there alongside a row of mannequins, again fooling people with not not one, not two, but 3 different poses over the course of another 15 minutes. Now it was getting really hot and I could hardly breathe in that skin suit, and so I made a movement after about 30 minutes that almost blew my cover as one lady thought she caught on, standing there examining me with her husband for what felt like an eternity, but I was able to stay stiff and somehow ultimately got out of there, having her thinking that she was just seeing things. And so I decided to end things there as to not push my luck any further, as I had already somehow fooled hundreds of people. So I guess I'm good at doing absolutely nothing. I gave out free candy in an unmarked car to see if anybody would take it. So growing up, I was told not to approach unmarked vans that were offering free candy, but I wanted to see if people still bought into that. And so I spray painted free candy on the side of my car and drove around a parking lot asking people to come get some. But here's the catch. I actually had $200 worth of king-size candy bars waiting for anybody who actually approached. And let me tell you, I was surprised with how many people disregarded their safety and accepted the offer, with some even leaning into the car to collect their candy. Now don't get me wrong, there were a couple of people who rightfully declined, but I'd say about 80% of people thought it was fun and games, even though it technically was, and were just ultimately happy to get their hands on some free sweets. Which I get, because candy is pretty expensive nowadays, but I'd say a good rule of thumb to follow is don't accept candies from stranger and don't lean into random cars. Unless it's me. Then I got you. I hired group performers just for myself. Starting with a stand-up comedian, I invited him over and had him perform a set with some crowd work. Unfortunately for him, the crowd was only myself, but he did a pretty good job. Afterwards, I invited a DJ over who thought that he was coming to a party, and he wasn't wrong, but it was just a party of one. We still had a good time though. I hired a Michael Jackson impersonator to come by next for my birthday party. Unfortunately, the birthday party was just for one, but he did perform an entire song and dance just for me and did his best to keep morale high. He even taught me how to moonwalk. I hired a motivational speaker next to speak to a crowd of one, and despite this curveball and having her all to myself, she was able to get me hyped and did a solid job. I hired a clown next under the guise that it was my non-existent child's birthday party. Unfortunately for him, when he arrived, it was just me, but he still did a bunch of clown activities with me, ranging from games all the way to making me animal balloons. And last but not least, I hired a hibachi chef in-house all for myself, and while it was definitely difficult to do indoors for multiple reasons, my chef didn't let the one-on-one phase him, and he cooked me a really solid meal. A bit awkward, but they all ultimately persevered. I know everything about you, so YouTube gives me my data on my audience, so every year I like to see what you guys are looking like. So in terms of location, 60% of you guys are based in the United States, with 8% in the UK and 5% in Canada, rounded out by 3% in Australia and India each. Hello? In terms of gender, 62% of you guys are male and 37% are female, about 1% specified something else. In terms of age, 33% of you are 25 to 34, 25% are 35 to 44. After this, 19% is 18 to 24. 67% of you guys aren't subscribed, so you can click there. And 67% of you guys also primarily watch me on the TV. You guys are primarily online during the weekends around 1 p.m. and around 50% of you guys are regular viewers, so welcome back. The most popular channels you guys watch are Zach D Films, Mapples, and John Casterline. The most popular long-form videos you guys have watched in the last 7 days was Jack Pembroke's I stealth camped outside of North Korea, good video. And the most popular short was How Was Ice Cream Made Before Freezers by Zach D Films. Pretty cool. Let me know if this sounds like you. I left a review for a place before I even tried it. So I found one of the lowest rated restaurants in my area and decided to give it 5 stars and a review before going in, seeing if I could manifest my own experience. I said there was no wait, the sandwich came out in 8 minutes, and they gave me a free birthday dessert, and I also said my waitress's name was Tanya. And then after leaving the review, I headed to the restaurant hoping to clear step 1, having no wait, and there were less than 10 people inside, so this actually came true. After this, I ordered my chicken sandwich hoping to get it in just 8 minutes, and to my surprise, it literally came in 8 minutes and 40 seconds, making my review half true. From here, I told our waiter that it was my birthday to see if he'd bring me out anything for free, and he brought out an entire chocolate cake with ice cream and actually informed me that it was on the house. I was shocked that my review was coming true, but then I remembered that I said his name was Tanya, so I got his name, and turns out it wasn't his name. So the review kinda came true. I mean, maybe it's his middle name. I made mascots for stores that don't have them. Starting with Taco Bell, I designed Belly, which was shaped like their Bell logo with a sombrero, and brought this to Taco Bell. I walked through the drive-thru and the workers actually loved it and even gave me free tacos from it, so I think Belly's official. From here, I went to Target and pitched Red, the Target Red Ball mascot, and I walked around the store trying to promote him, and I'd say overall he had mixed reviews, but I think he's cute and blends in nicely with the storefront. Burger King recently got rid of the King mascot because he was too creepy, so I decided to bring a cute version back called the Prince with waifu eyes and went inside of this BK, and this mascot was an absolute hit with the customers, so I really think they should reskin the King to the Prince. 7-Eleven is one of the most popular brands in the world, but they don't have a mascot, so I made them Slurpee, who was designed after a coffee cup with a pool noodle as a straw, and the shop owner loved him so much that I was able to convince him to have it stay up as a relic in their store. And then I ended things with a Subway mascot named Freshie, and I was able to go in with my friend Milad and make some sandwiches in costume. I personally like him the most because I think he's a good addition to Subway after everything that went down with Jared. But pretty cool. I opened a pay what you want coffee stand to see how much money I would make. So to do this, I bought a box of Joe coffee from Dunkin' and put it out on a folding table in a New York City park, complete with hot cups, creamers, and sugar. Next to it, I put a sign that told people to pay what they want for the coffee with a Venmo QR code attached. Now the goal was to make about $10, but very quickly I realized this was unrealistic because while people were actually going over and taking coffee, nobody was Venmoing me any money. And there were dozens of people who even looked to be scanning the QR code, but my Venmo remained dry as the coffee continued depleting. I decided to wrap things up after about an hour and a half because my supply was finished, and according to my Venmo, I made exactly $0. However, when I walked over to the table, I was surprised to find 30 cents cash left for me by one of my customers, which I hadn't even realized, which to be honest isn't ideal, but at least somebody found some value in the free coffee I was providing. I lost $50 total though, so not worth it. I played a horror game on the world's smallest monitor to see if it was still scary. So I bought this 2-inch monitor that you can plug into a larger screen to project a game on it and booted up the world's scariest game because I was curious if the small size would affect my ability to get scared. Now the game I was playing is a maze that has a jump scare hidden within it somewhere, and so I was carefully going through trying my best to 1, stay within the lines because it was too tiny to get any sort of precision, and 2, prepare myself for the impending jump scare. I was squinting the entire time because of how small this thing was, but I have to say my heart rate was still increasing as I got closer and closer to the jump scare. But surely it couldn't be scary on such a small screen, right? Well, I finally got there after a few minutes and worked my way around the bend where the meat lied, and that's when this happened. Somehow, someway, the smaller monitor actually made it scarier. So I guess size doesn't matter. I played every secret game. So on Spotify, there's a secret game called Eat the Playlist, where if you click the settings on any playlist, you can play a snake-like game in which you move this icon around until you eat the cover art for the next song, which triggers the next song to play. This one was honestly a lot of fun and allows you to change the songs at your own pace while remaining stimulated throughout. Afterwards, I played Emoji Pong on Instagram, and this one allows you to send an emoji to somebody, then immediately challenge them to a Pong game using that emoji. I definitely spent way too much time playing that. Then I played Google's iconic offline dinosaur scrolling game in which you have to jump and dodge the obstacles as you go across the desert. This one was a lot of fun as always, but not as fun as some of the secret Google search games. Like when you type in Katamari, you can roll this ball around, destroying the entire screen, or if you type in Zerg Rush, you have to defeat these oncoming O's before they destroy the entire webpage. And finally, I played the Microsoft Excel game where if you have the 1997 version of it, you can type in this reference and then launch a flight simulator where you fly around this purple horizon. So now you know. I pretended to be a wax figure to see if anybody would notice. So I went to the New Jersey Hall of Fame and found a roped off area where I decided to stand for 20 minutes pretending to be a wax figure. I threw on sunglasses to ensure that I wouldn't blink, and I printed out a biography about myself that I put on a plaque in front of me to add to the realism. Now I started with a basic pose, and I was surprised with how still I was able to be, with everybody walking by genuinely confused as to if I was real or not. They would stay for what felt like hours just staring at me, waiting for me to breathe or make any movement. Luckily though, I locked in and I was able to convince basically everybody that I was wax. So after successfully fooling people for 5 to 10 minutes, I decided to switch up my pose to this next one, but it was more of the same. But this time they were seriously challenging me, staying there for another 5 minutes and getting really close trying to detect my movement, but again, I was able to stay still. After things cleared out, I took a breather because I hadn't breathed properly in like 20 minutes, and I went back out there for one final pose, and once again, despite many people walking by, I don't think a single person detected that I was a real person. I secretly worked as a janitor to see if anybody would notice. So to do this, I purchased a janitor costume online, as well as a mop and a mop bucket, and I hit my local mall to see what I could get away with. I started by performing some janitorial duties like mopping the floor and cleaning up trash, making sure to say hi to my fellow mall employees who didn't seem to realize that I was a fake. I wanted to push things further though, and so I snuck into a store that was being renovated, sweeping my way through the main floor into the back rooms, and at this point the janitor costume felt like a cheat code to do whatever I want. And so to really test this further, I wanted to see if my outfit would grant me a mall employee discount. And so I went to a Starbucks and asked for it, and I was actually able to get one, which was kind of crazy. Afterwards, I continued cleaning, going into different stores, and I actually had a few people tell me thank you for your service, which was really nice to hear, but I wasn't actually doing anything to deserve that, and so I decided to find an actual nearby janitor and retire right in front of them, giving them some money to finish up the tasks I left, and got out of my fit, returning to being a normal pedestrian. It was fun though, so shout out to the custodians out there. I secretly worked as the Dunkin' mascot for a day. So Dunkin' apparently has a mascot called Cuppy that comes out every so often for special events, and so I decided to dress up as him to try and promote the business. My first task was to infiltrate Starbucks, hoping to divert some traffic by standing outside of it with munchkins and giving them out, and this worked worked perfectly, as within minutes of standing there, my inventory was depleted, and even the Starbucks employees wanted my munchkins. My next task was to build up brand equity by taking pictures with Dunkin' fans and giving out full-size donuts. This was seamless, and I was taking hundreds of pictures and slinging dozens of donuts, all while I was sweating away in this 100-degree mascot suit. And then my third task, which was arguably the most important, was ensuring that there were no bad actors nearby. But this didn't last long, as Red the Angry Bird mascot came over, infringing on my meet and greet, and so I challenged him to a game of mini golf, with the loser having to retire their costume. Now, since he's a bird, he didn't have arms to hold his club, so instead I allowed his stand to play for him. But it didn't matter, because I ended up beating him handily, retiring Red forever, and making my claim for being the world's greatest mascot. I secretly worked at places until I got caught. Starting with IKEA, I threw on a yellow polo and khakis and walked around greeting customers at the entrance, organizing items in the maze, and just generally helping out. The employees were suspicious of me, and I was ultimately confronted by one of the managers, but she actually liked what I was doing and gave me her business card, so technically I got caught, but in a good way. From here, I secretly worked at Whole Foods, where I was putting carts back, and so I threw on my green vest and began corralling the carts and organizing them in their areas. And it was freezing outside and quite windy, so I was super happy to help, and the employees didn't care at all and actually even appreciated the help. After this, I secretly worked as an elf for Mall Santa, greeting people at the Winter Wonderland entrance and taking pictures with kids, also taking pictures of families and directing families where to go. And this was probably the best secret job, and Santa even said hello to me a few times, so I think that he genuinely thought I worked there. And finally, inspired, I decided to go to my local dead mall and dress up as Mall Santa to bring some cheer to people, and while the interactions were few and far between, I was able to give away some quarter zips to people and ultimately went unnoticed, marking a true success for my secret employment. I spent $1,000 on a movie ticket to see if it was worth it. So there's a theater in New York City called Metro Private Cinema, in which you can rent out an entire private suite to watch any movie of your choice, complete with fine dining and amenities that you typically don't find in your standard theater. The movie theater lobby is actually just a bar, and in the back is your private suite. When you walk in, you're met with a welcome drink and endless bottles of wine and beverages, alongside a personal server who facilitates your 3-course meal before starting the movie. You can control things like the temperature, you can play ambient music on a record player, and they even give you these ultra soft blankets that you can use if you're cold. You sit on these couches for the meal, and then after finishing the entrees and desserts, you can sit in these classic reclining heated seats to watch the actual movie. There's only one preview, so it goes directly into the movie afterwards, and then you're free to just move around and talk if you'd like, as well as request additional food, drinks, popcorn, or basically anything else where you enjoy a pretty sizable private screen to watch whatever it is that you're watching. So, is it worth it? I mean, if you're splitting with 10 other people, maybe, otherwise definitely not. Very cool though. I stayed at an AI hotel. It's called Autonomous in Las Vegas, and it opened in 2025 and claims to be the world's first fully AI-powered hotel. Now, the outside looks unassuming, almost like an apartment complex, but when you go inside to check in, you're met with a robot named Otto who's able to freely talk to you about anything before ultimately pointing you to a kiosk for digital check-in. The inside of the hotel looks pretty standard otherwise, though they do have a pretty cool server room that hosts all the computers, which I thought was interesting. I checked out the convenience store, which is fully self-serve and uses this really cool checkout machine that uses AI to detect which food you grab and rings you up accordingly. And apparently they're also in the process of building a fully AI-powered restaurant, whatever that means. When I got to the room, there honestly wasn't anything too AI-y about it, outside of a Nest thermostat, I guess. But it did have an e-butler service on the iPad where you're able to order things to the room like towels, with it mysteriously arriving through the chute system next to your door. And if you have any other needs, they make you download this app, in which it basically serves as a digital concierge for anything else you need. So I'd say it's a pretty cool concept, but definitely right now a little bit underwhelming. I stayed at desert Airbnbs. Starting with this Tesla shipping container, this was in the middle of nowhere and had one-way windows that didn't let you see inside, despite having an eviction notice on it when I arrived. If you're the owner watching this, you owe a call to California. It was actually really cool in there and had a ton of natural light and modern space. After this was a dune-themed Airbnb, literally in the middle of nowhere. This thing was an indoor-outdoor hybrid build with a retractable roof that allowed you to stargaze at night, secret caverns leading to different areas, and the tallest showerhead I've ever seen. Next up, I hit a yurt tent that was literally just this white tent with a bed inside. Not sure how protected I was in there. And then I stayed at a castle tower in the middle of the desert that was an old watchtower repurposed as a place to stay. And they even let you go on top. After this was an Airstream, which was like a really shiny RV, complete with a bed, kitchen, and shower on the inside, surprisingly comfy. And then I ended things at a space-themed desert Airbnb that had an actual dome observatory where you could click a button and it would automatically show you the moon and any stars in the sky. Very cool. I stayed at Treehouse Airbnbs. Starting with this one, which had 4 different sections on 3 different levels, connected by a bunch of net bridges. It had a really great view and it was definitely as luxury as it sounds. After this was an Eggo-themed treehouse that was shaped like a waffle in the middle of the mountains. And this one had all different Eggo themes inside of it and was painted yellow and red in every single room. From here, I found an Eggcorn-shaped treehouse, which looked like this, and on the inside, they had a ladder leading up to a netted hammock where you could hang out and lay. And then I found this other one that had a literal entire tree inside of it, which was one of the coolest ones of them all. Next was a Harry Potter-themed treehouse, which had a lot of fun details of Harry Potter, including his bedroom and a sorting hat. I tried it on and I was Slytherin. And then afterwards, I tried this cool Hobbit Airbnb that looked exactly like the one from the movies. I took a super high pedestrian bridge to get high enough to see this next Airbnb, which was this cool one that had a slide coming out of it to the bottom and even a mini golf course next to it. And then I ended things at this Mountain Dome Airbnb where I was able to see out out into the mountains, though there was very little privacy because the entire thing was transparent. But very cool. I superglued a pickle jar to see if anybody could open it. So opening a pickle jar is widely considered to be one of the most impressive feats of strength that a man can do, and so I devised a plan to superglue a pickle jar to see if even the strongest person I know could complete the impossible. I got Gorilla Glue and placed it all over the lid, and then I twisted it on, waiting 24 hours for maximum adhesion, then went back the next day to test it out, and I could confirm that this thing was tightly on. I then invited over a TaskRabbit specializing in strength to see if he could open it, and he tried over and over and over again with various grips and techniques to the point where his hands were getting red, but unfortunately even he couldn't do it. So I decided to give it one more attempt myself, using everything at my disposal from a bat to a sword to even a katana to bust this thing open, but I couldn't do it. That is, until I remembered a technique that I had learned in the past in which you could let the air out of the pickle jar by making little slices on the lid. So I worked smarter, not harder, and did that, hoping that this would be the difference maker when I gave it one final try, but this thing was not budging. I'm pretty sure it's impossible to open. I tested 4 levels of alarm clocks. Level 1 is a target shot alarm clock that requires you to wake up and focus to have the precision to shoot the target. Level 2 is a rolling alarm clock that runs away when it goes off to physically get you up. Level 3 is a flying alarm clock that flies away when it goes off, similar to the rolling one. Unfortunately, that one was a dud. And then level 4 is the world's loudest alarm clock, which apparently reaches over 100 decibels directly in your ear, and so I loaded that up and tried it. Very unpleasant. I think I'll stick to this one. I tested AI survival products. Starting with a $1,000 offline AI survival kit called the Ark, it has a chatbot contained within it that can help you answer any survival question like what berries you can eat, how to properly hunt an animal, and what to do if the weather turns on you. It's also waterproof and drop proof, so that's pretty cool. Next, I bought a $3,000 drone that's able to use AI tracking software to locate you if you're lost, as well as the capability to attach things to it for rescue missions in case you need to be brought food. You're even able to fish with it, though not successfully. I bought a Starlink next, which promises to give you Wi-Fi in basically any situation, including the wilderness. I was skeptical that this would work, but it actually did, giving me solid download speed thanks to their satellite connection. I next purchased an AI water purification pen, which uses ultraviolet light to purify any water, including still lake water. I was a little bit skeptical of this as well, but it actually ended up working. I also tried a life straw, which let me drink directly out of the lake using its filtration system, and that felt strange, but that also worked too. And then the final product I got was a bio stove, which promises to transfer the heat of a fire to make electricity. And while I didn't think that I'd ever be able to charge my phone using sticks and rocks, I was wrong. I tested AI travel products. Starting with this $500 AI sleep band that reads your brainwaves and sends electrical signals to your brain to get you to sleep quicker to eliminate jet lag. I tried it and it was actually pretty cool, but I don't know if that was just placebo. Next, I tried these AI Batman travel glasses that have AR capabilities to turn 2D videos into 3D for entertainment, and Google Maps arrows appearing on the street for you when you need directions. It was definitely a bit goofy looking, but overall worked surprisingly well despite messing up in the directions. I tried a $200 AI translator device next, which is able to clone your voice and then real-time translate in any language to the person you're talking to. And honestly, this was a waste of money because I'm pretty sure Google Translate does this for free. Also for $200 was an AI travel companion called AB, who you put around your neck and can tell you what you're looking at and take pictures. AB didn't respond to me a single time, so he gets 0 out of 5 stars. Though I bought another $200 AI companion in the form of this cat that was basically a stuffed animal on steroids, responding to my voice commands and taking form like a real cat. And then I ended things with a $400 AI travel toothbrush, and I have to say, despite starting off skeptical, this thing actually worked amazingly well. Very cool. I tested an AI car. It's called Zoox, and it's a driverless robo-taxi owned by Amazon that was created to compete with Waymo and Tesla, but this one is different in that it comes in this unique pod shape and it has face-to-face seating arrangements. And so I called one through their app and waited 45 minutes for mine to show up. When it eventually arrived, you enter the car by entering a unique code that's given through the app, then you can proceed in and start your ride. Now the car is equipped with AI-powered sensors and cameras all around you to ensure that your seatbelt is on and you're complying with safety standards, and once the car confirms that, your ride can begin. You have a touchpad to control things like music and climate, and the ride itself is pretty smooth with smart self-driving capabilities and a lot of great views because of the window design. And all was going great until we ran into emergency vehicles and road closures around a stadium area, and that's when the robotaxi fell apart because I actually had no idea what to do in that situation, and not only caused a bunch of backed up traffic, but also had to emergency drop me off on the side of the road because of how confused it was. So cool concept, but not perfect yet. I tested cartoon logic in real life. Starting off by seeing if a go-kart would actually slip in a banana peel, I assembled a go-kart, got a banana peel, and tossed it behind me on the ground. You're not going to believe this, but I actually kept spinning out after driving it over, so that holds up. Next, I wanted to see if running through a wall and leaving your silhouette was possible, and so I got some thick foam board and ran the experiment, and at first glance it seemed to fail, but upon closer inspection it kind of looked like my body. I also wanted to see if I could saw out a circle beneath me and delay my fall, which sounded good on paper, but in practice it didn't work whatsoever. Krabby Patties are cooked underwater, and so I tried recreating that environment by cooking the meal entirely submerged in water. This went about as good as you'd expect. I ate spinach before a workout to see if it would make me stronger like Popeye, and after downing the canned spinach, I for whatever reason was able to increase my reps. I wanted to see if a really crappy disguise would keep people from recognizing me, and so I went into a public hotspot to assess, but unfortunately it didn't work whatsoever. And then I wanted to test a boomerang because I just don't believe that boomerangs work for whatever reason. Sorry, Australians. And so I threw it, and it actually worked. Good job, Australians. I tested dead places at their busiest hour. Starting with Mattress Firm, which typically has an average of 3 people in their store at any given time. I went during its peak hour, which according to Google was 6 p.m. after people get off of work. I was definitely skeptical of it being busy whatsoever because I've never seen a Mattress Firm busy, but I ended up being wrong because there were 6 people in this store. Still not a lot, but double of the usual. After this, I tried Boston Market, a home-cooked meal-style restaurant that once had 1,200 locations and now just 17. Lunchtime at 1 p.m. is considered their busiest hour, and despite this place typically being a ghost zone, there were probably 4 people in the store, which, all things considered, is pretty busy. Men's Warehouse was next, which typically has 5 people in a store at any given time. I went during their peak hour at 12 o'clock, and there was probably 6 or 7 people in the store. I went to a dead mall next, and their busiest hour, according to Google, was 6 p.m. This mall wasn't only completely dead, but there were literally 0 people in there because they're in the process of closing, so didn't really feel much of a difference. And then I ended things by going to stores like Floor & Decor and Staples, which typically don't have a lot of people in them, but at their peak hour, they ended up each having about 30 people in them, so it shows that even dead places can be busy at their busiest hour. I tested display items at stores. Starting with IKEA, I was wondering if it was possible to prepare food inside of one of their kitchens. So to test this, I brought a bunch of supplies to make a sandwich and got to it, using the kitchen at my disposal and putting together a pretty tasty sandwich. There was no friction whatsoever, and none of the employees or customers seemed to care that I was doing it, and so I decided to eat my sandwich on one of the display kitchen tables, and once again, nobody seemed to care, including the employees. After this, I decided to lounge on the couch for 30 minutes with a bag of chips. Once again, nobody cared, and I was even able to take a full 30-minute nap on one of their display beds with one of the blankets. But how about Home Depot? Because I've always found it weird that you weren't able to try out the display toilets before buying them, and so I decided to scale the shelf and plop myself down on one of the display toilets to get a good test in, and it was really nice. And then afterwards, I decided to test one of the showers as well. I also had to climb for that. But I think one of the strangest things is that you're not allowed to try appliances before buying them, and in fact, there's no electrical outlets really in any store. And so to get around this, I decided to bring my own generator into places like Target and Lowe's so I could test things like a lamp, a mini fridge, a microwave, and I was even able to power an entire washing machine to try it out. I mean, they're there for a reason. I tested every Zach D Films video. Starting with how to escape a trunk, the video showed that trunks have a manual escape lever, and so I entered a trunk to test this out, and it turns out this was actually true. Next up was how to remove cactus spines using glue, and I was skeptical about this one, and rightfully so, because I couldn't remove any of the spines from this artificial hand that I penetrated with cactus needles. Next, we had how to worm charm and summon them to the surface by mimicking vibrations with 2 sticks. Now, this sounded incredibly goofy and untrue, but after trying this in different dirt areas, I was actually able to summon 2 worms, which was actually crazy. I was taught how to break an apple with your bare hands next, and after many attempts, I was finally able to get it, and then I tried to make a candle from an orange, and this somehow worked as well. Apparently, you can pick up broken glass shards with a potato. I tried this, and while inefficient, it did technically work. And then I tested the double domino effect, in which you can get 2 domino falls in a row if you position things the right way, and I have to say, this was by far the coolest thing I've ever done. So shout out to Zach. I tested Facebook Marketplace after midnight. So common wisdom says you should never meet up with strangers after dark, but I figured it couldn't be too unsafe, and so I found some of the sketchiest Facebook Market listings I could find and proposed meetups late at night. Starting with this custom Labubu costume, I asked if the seller would meet me in an abandoned parking garage dressed up as the character for extra money, and they actually did, officially making it the scariest visual I've ever seen. I ended up buying it. After this was a sketchy cookie dealer who was using fake images of cookies and called himself The Plug. I was pretty certain these were going to be weed cookies, but they ended up being these really amazing cookies made by this high schooler named Danny. Next up, I ordered baby oil from a seller that was selling it, and she told me to come into her house to pick it up, and I thought I was about to enter into a Diddy party, and while that didn't happen, it was definitely one of the sketchier moments in my life. Now, a couple sellers were sketched out by the late night requests, and so they ended up just leaving their items out in bags. But I have to say, the weirdest interaction I had was when I was purchasing this traffic light where I chose to meet under a bridge while I was wearing the Labubu costume, and this definitely made for a tense interaction. Don't try this. I tested summer activities during a winter storm. Starting with the slip and slide, I was hopeful this would translate well with the snow acting as lubricant, but unfortunately after multiple attempts, I couldn't efficiently do it. From here, I tried flying a kite, and this was surprisingly better during a storm with the high winds taking my kite over 500 feet in the sky. I tried flying a drone too, but Unfortunately, I ended up losing it. I next played golf in the snow, which was difficult given the white on white, but it did make for a fun session, and then afterwards I played basketball, but this was basically impossible. I wanted to light fireworks to see how that would look in the winter, and I actually think this arguably looked cooler given the contrast to the snow, and then I tried to blow bubbles, but the snow popped them before they would adhere to the wand. I blew up a bouncy castle, a classic kids activity in the summer, and in a blizzard there's a lot more slippage and I ended up destroying it. And lastly, I tried getting a tan by laying out in the sun, but it was -3 degrees outside, so unfortunately I didn't last long enough to get a bronze, so I don't recommend. I tested places 1 minute before closing. Starting with Dunkin', I wanted to see if I can get some free donuts because I know they give them away last minute before throwing them away, but unfortunately every Dunkin' I went to, I was either too late and they had already thrown them out, or they just told me it's against store policy. After this, I went to my local Olive Garden where I wanted to see if they'd seat me despite Google hours showing them closing in 1 minute, and they happily sat me with no issues, so I ordered a simple meal and then left right before cleanup. I tried this at Walmart next, walking in at 9:59, and because of its massive size, I was able to just wander around the store past closing, going through aisles while the employees cleaned up, and I was even able to make a purchase 15 minutes after closing. From here, I went to a movie theater because I wanted to see if they'd sell me a ticket 1 minute before the movie ended, but I learned that the latest you can buy a ticket is 30 minutes after showtime, but luckily my guy bent the rules for me and sold me a Wicked ticket 1 hour in. And then I went to a Domino's trying to order a pizza 1 minute before closing, and to my surprise, they said yes with absolutely no issues. But don't try this, unless you take care of them.